Chapter 305. Absolute Order. After Guan reached the 9th layer of the divine thought true immortal realm, the spiritual energy and rules within the universe that had been violently disturbed returned to tranquility. Looking around, powerful figures were darting in all directions, while the pair of eyes that had been spying on the universe had already disappeared. Guan slowly opened his eyes, his gaze indifferent. Having seen so many lives, his Taoist heart had been elevated, and in the unknown reaches, he had even touched upon a Tao that belonged to himself. The Tao is long and profound, necessitating accumulation over lengthy eons. Currently, Guan possessed only cultivation level. Wishing to strengthen his Tao, he needed to traverse real time in reality. Of course, this did not mean Guan was weaker compared to others at the same realm. The Tao was merely the direction for his future cultivation. 9 heavens of immortal path. Divine thought true immortal was already the 8th heaven. Qi cultivation, foundation establishment, core formation, nascent soul, divinity transformation, void crossing unification, mystic heart, Mahayana, nirvana, loose immortal, wandering immortal, heaven and earth flying immortal, carefree primordial immortal, divine immortal of wondrous dharma, Tao void mysterious immortal, divine thought true immortal. Unknowingly, Guan had transcended so many major realms. He was only 220 years old now. His future achievements were limitless. What realm lies above the 9 heavens? Guan fell into endless reverie, uncaring about the figures moving in various directions. Let alone other divine thought true immortals. Currently no Tao void mysterious immortal had appeared, likely hidden in the shadows. Considering the mysterious giant eye he had encountered before, he now recalled and still could not see through the opponent's cultivation level. Guan looked at the consumption of the lifespan barrier and frowned. This breakthrough alone had consumed over 50 million years of lifespan. Now he had only 340 million years left. This breakthrough, exhausting nearly 300 million years, made it hard to imagine how many years the next breakthrough would require. Nevertheless, the cultivation of the 9th layer of divine thought true immortal realm was enough for him to protect himself. Guan stood up, thinking of the scene inside the 3rd Medicine Valley Pavilion. Just as the thought arose, he returned indoors. This was the prowess of a divine thought true immortal. Thinking of a place, moving at will, he had already achieved the ability to be omnipresent to an initial extent. The whole heaven and earth appeared different to Guan. He saw more rules, and the universe became clearer. He once again spied on the great heavenly spirit land, his divine sense far surpassing his previous divine perception, allowing him to penetrate the formations and restrictions of those great powers without being noticed. This great heaven and earth indeed harbored divine immortals of wondrous dharma. Though few in number, all were in seclusion, detached from worldly affairs. Guan's gaze turned to the immortal spirit dynasty, which was located on a continent much larger than the one beneath his feet, with newborns starting at the nirvana realm. There, too, were divine immortals of wondrous dharma, even Tao void mysterious immortals, as well as places too profound to probe. In his eyes, the standard for being unprovable was silence. His divine thought could forcefully intrude, but it would surely disturb the beings inside. This immortal spirit dynasty is strong. If it weren't for the Holy Court, it would not be difficult for this dynasty to unify the great heavenly spirit land. However, they seemed not to desire hegemony but were isolated from the world. Guan saw no immortals coming in and out. He then turned his divine thoughts towards the Holy Court at the other end of heaven and earth. The baseline of the Holy Court was not as high as that of the immortal spirit dynasty, but the number of beings in the Holy Court was extremely large, incomparable to the immortal spirit dynasty, and the number of beings at the same realm was also greater than that of the immortal spirit dynasty. If the immortal spirit dynasty was taking an elite route, the Holy Court was developing in all aspects, and it held absolute control over the great heavenly spirit land. There were also places in the Holy Court that Guan would not offend lightly, but after roughly spying around, Guan felt that the Holy Court was still stronger than the immortal spirit dynasty. During his observation, Guan saw the carefree primordial immortals moving in and out of the great heavenly spirit land in ways that beings could not perceive. He secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, after reaching the heaven and earth flying immortal realm, he had not acted recklessly. Otherwise, when the carefree primordial immortal arrived in front of him, he would not even have been aware. After reaching the divine thought true immortal realm, Guan was better able to sense the foundation of the great heavenly spirit land, and of course, he also had his own confidence, not so fearful of the holy court. Guan vaguely saw the chief fortune of the holy court forming an invisible passage, leading deep into the universe, entering the annihilation zone. His gaze involuntarily turned towards the annihilation zone. The universe was vast and boundless, and the annihilation zone was not just in one direction but surrounded the cosmic region where the great heavenly spirit land was located, although the great heavenly spirit land was closer to one side. Thus, the beings of the great heavenly spirit land who flew out mistook that the silent destruction domain was only in one direction. Even for a heaven and earth flying immortal, flying to the annihilation zone from another direction would take many years, enough to see how vast the universe is. Guan retracted his divine thoughts, filled with emotion. This world was different from what he had anticipated. Due to the influence of past life culture, he felt that if there was the immortal path, there would be order, with immortals governing all things under heaven and reincarnation constraining yin-yang. Yet in reality there was none. There were realms of immortal path, but no immortals governing the heavenly Tao. There were reincarnation and yin-yang, yet no order like that of the underworld. Now, having observed the universe, Guan had only one feeling. It was chaos. There was no absolute order. Guan thought that there might be an even vaster world on the other end of the universe, with the silent destruction domain impeding the steps of the beings of the great heavenly spirit land, especially since he had learned through reincarnation evolution about the existence of other great lands. Speaking of the Dark Great Land alone, he felt that the Dark Great Land was stronger and larger than the Great Heavenly Spirit Land. This was normal. Wuxia had mentioned that the current Great Heavenly Spirit Land was just a fragment. How vast the true Great Heavenly Spirit Land was hard to imagine. Guan couldn't help but think of his juniors, his disciples. His pride faded along. Though a divine thought true immortal was indeed powerful, he had not yet reached a stage where he could command reincarnation. At least he could not make those around him immortal. He was planning to visit Yilan after some time to see if he could help extend her ultimate lifespan. Guan raised his hand, tapping the desktop with a finger. This action was transmitting mana. He was enhancing the mana within the Heaven Cutting Axe while also strengthening the words, Righteous Path, on the Heavenly Repair platform. Since the prestige of Sword Venerable Fudao had already been established, he would just have to maintain it. At the end of summer, the weather was gradually cooling. In the woods, Guan was guiding Yang Jian in his cultivation. Yang Jian wielded a trident and blade, his attacks swift and powerful, yet unable to harm Guan, who with just 2 fingers could block all his attacks. This trident and blade were forged by order of Li Xiandao and had already been given to Yang Jian, but typically inside Medicine Valley, Yang Jian would not bring out this divine weapon. The making of this divine weapon was similar to that of the Heaven Cutting Axe, weighing 1,000,000 jin, and it contained special restrictions inside that enhanced its strike force. Yang Jian grew more and more astonished in battle. He had gone all out, not to threaten his master, but under his master's suppression. Even the force he swung could not damage the woods. At first glance, he seemed like a martial artist who was just faster and more forceful in his movements. Blood Prison Great Saint lay on the side watching. He was not surprised, feeling that it should be so. What he cared about was Yang Jian's state. This young man's aura was getting stronger, and he could not imagine what posture Yang Jian would have once he reached the Mahayana realm. Yang Jian leaped up, slashing down furiously. Guan raised his right hand, pinning the blade between his fingers, preventing it from pressing downward, which made Yang Jian tremble. All right, let's stop for today. Guan spoke, his tone calm, thereafter setting Yang Jian down. Yang Jian sheathed his blade and hurriedly bowed, his heart uneasy, unsure if he had satisfied his master. His actual cultivation had reached the 7th layer of divinity transformation realm. Other than his own efforts, he received many elixirs from Guan. As for cultivation speed, it quite satisfied Guan. Let's go back. A major figure is visiting today. Guan revealed a smile, softly speaking. Yang Jian couldn't help but be curious. What major figure? They walked towards the outside of the woods. Along the way, Blood Prison Great Saint started to evaluate Yang Jian's battle, imparting practical fighting experience, and Yang Jian, knowing his true cultivation, listened very attentively. An ancient hour later, Guan was playing chess with Stealing the Five Elements, watched by Nine-Fingered Divine Lord, Shen Xinzi, and a crowd of cultivators. Stealing the Five Elements was frowning deeply, hesitating to make a move. Just then, a sonorous voice echoed through Supreme Sect, reverberating across the continent. Holy Minister decrees Sword Venerable Fudeo's merit in saving beings is notable, and he may enter the Holy Court to receive the Chief Fortune Fruit position. Upon these words, everyone in Medicine Valley looked up, and Guan also pretended to look. After a brief silence, uproars broke out in Medicine Valley. The Holy Court? A reward for Sword Venerable Fudao? What's the matter? What power is this Holy Court? What is Chief Fortune Fruit position? It sounds quite powerful. Who is this holy minister, daring to recruit Sword Venerable Fudao? Too arrogant. Most disciples felt dissatisfied with the Holy Court after hearing this, feeling that the Holy Court did not respect Sword Venerable Fudao. At least from these words, it seemed the Holy Court considered itself stronger than Sword Venerable Fudao. Guan could not help but shake his head in amusement. Recruit me? But this plot point somewhat resembles Journey to the West. Luckily, it's not recruiting me to be Horse's Fortune. A disciple couldn't help but inquire about the background of the Holy Court from Nine-Fingered Divine Lord, who did not conceal anything, and began to introduce the Holy Court. Hearing that the Holy Court was the overlord of the entire world, the disciples' dissatisfaction quickly dissipated. Immediately after, they started to worry about Sword Venerable Fudao leaving. Without Sword Venerable Fudao, what would they do in case of another crisis in the future? Meanwhile, Guan sensed that the heaven and earth flying immortal who had transmitted the message had already stepped onto the heavenly repair platform. He immediately stood up to go watch the excitement. Inside the outer gate city, the crowd was buzzing. People on the heavenly repair platform were discussing the Holy Court, many also believing that the Holy Court was undervaluing Sword Venerable Fudao. A man in white walked among the crowd, his pace not quick, his long sleeves fluttering, his appearance handsome, holding a folding fan in his hand. He wore a smile on his face, his heart scornful. A group of mortals dares to question the Holy Court? The man in white was not angry, he would not bother with mortals over this. And since this was Sword Venerable Fudeo's territory, it would not be good to offend Sword Venerable Fudao. A great power capable of eradicating the great cold demon sect was not someone he could provoke. After delivering the holy minister's message, he did not care whether Sword Venerable Fudao agreed or not. He now wanted to try out that heaven-cutting axe. Before coming to Supreme Sect, he had heard about the legend of the heaven-cutting axe while traveling in the Taizong dynasty. Chapter 306. I am Sword Venerable Fudao. The man in white walked for a while, slowly arriving in front of the heaven-cutting axe. Zuijian saw his extraordinary bearing and couldn't help but scrutinize him with curiosity. The man in white asked with a smile, I am Lu Xianyi, may I try my hand at the heaven-cutting axe? The creatures of this continent are too weak. Naturally, it would be impossible for them to receive the inheritance of Sword Venerable Fudao. If he could achieve that, it would also be a fortuitous opportunity for him. Leaving aside his identity, for him as a heaven and earth flying immortal, Great Cold Demon Sect is certainly an immovable behemoth that he could easily sweep away. The man in white speculated that Sword Venerable Fudao might possess abilities comparable to a holy king. Go ahead, but you can only pull once per day, said Zuijian, neither haughty nor humble. Over the years he had seen too many great cultivators, and the pride in his heart had also been growing. In his eyes, the honor of Sword Venerable Fudao was even higher than the prosperity of the Supreme Sect. The man in white nodded and turned his gaze to the heaven-cutting axe. At the same time, Guan stood among the crowd, watching the man in white from afar and sending out a lifespan detection. Lu Xianyi, 9 layers of heaven and earth flying immortal realm 67980/50000/890000. An extreme lifespan of 890,000 years. It was unknown what realm he could reach in his lifetime. Guan suspected that a certain realm might once again bring a transformation of extreme lifespan. But since his breakthroughs did not increase his lifespan, he was not clear about which realm would bring about such a transformation. Furthermore, in his view, the previous great realms all had the feeling of being reborn from the ashes. Under Gu An's watchful gaze, Lu Xianyi grasped the handle of the heaven-cutting axe, and his expression changed slightly. The gaze of more and more onlookers fell upon them. Anyone looking at Lu Xianyi would think that he came from an extraordinary background. Lu Xianyi began to exert force, and for a moment, the heavenly repair platform trembled slightly, but the heaven-cutting axe did not budge an inch. Zui Yijian's look changed when he saw Lu Xianyi shake the heavenly repair platform. It indicated that Lu Xianyi's cultivation level was extremely profound. It was too normal to not be able to lift the heaven-cutting axe. After all, Sword Venerable Fudao was unmatched in the world. At least in Zui Yijian's heart, Sword Venerable Fudao was invincible. Wait a minute. This guy's voice is very similar to the one who shouted just now. It's not just similar, it's the exact same voice, just quieter, and the oppressive feeling is also restrained. Having realized this, Zui Yijian's gaze towards Lu Xianyi was filled with hostility. How dare this scoundrel try to poach the Sword Venerable? Outrageous! The commotion caused by Lu Xianyi attracted the attention of everyone on the heavenly repair platform. But he didn't pull for too long. After a few breaths, he released his hand. He let out a long sigh, stepped back, and said with a smile, "Sword Venerable Fudao is indeed as reputed. I am impressed." After that, he raised his hand in salute to the heaven-cutting axe, then turned and left. The cultivators along the way made way for him, afraid of offending him. Just from the commotion earlier, they felt they were not in a position to provoke him. Guan stood among the crowd and also gazed at Lu Xianyi. Soon, Lu Xianyi disappeared from the platform, prompting discussion among the cultivators there. Guan then headed down the platform. Since he was here, he might as well take a stroll. Otherwise, stealing the 5 elements and 9-fingered Divine Lord would suspect why he specifically came to watch Lu Xianyi. Of course, the most important reason was that Guan did not want to play go with stealing the 5 elements. These guys were playing slower and slower games. Guan certainly understood their malicious intentions. Indeed, at this moment, stealing the 5 elements was still claiming the last game was a draw. Although the others didn't believe it, stealing the 5 elements was dead set on it, and no one else wanted to pursue the matter further, as the cultivation levels were quite deterring. Guan paid a visit to the Elixir Hall, where almost everyone recognized him, except for the disciples who had just started this year. His income from Medicine Valley was one of the highest in the entire Supreme Sect, not to mention he was also a core formation realm cultivator. Even having reached the divine thought true immortal realm, Guan still liked to chat with others. As for the invitation from the Holy Court, he didn't want to pay it any mind. Going to the Holy Court was likely to cause trouble, and he certainly didn't want any of that. What if, in the process, he ended up making enemies with the Holy Court? Although Guan had wiped out the Ephemera sect, the 7 Stars Spirit Realm, and the Great Cold Demon sect, he was inherently kind-hearted and peace-loving. Well, if it's possible to avoid making enemies, then it's better not to. Not until dusk did Guan return to his valley, and by then, stealing the 5 elements had long since disappeared. In the days that followed, Guan noticed that Lu Xianyi had no intention of leaving the Supreme Sect. Guan couldn't help praying, hoping the man wouldn't enter his Medicine Valley. The 3rd Medicine Valley had already hidden too many monsters and devils. It couldn't house any more. Summer passed and autumn arrived. In the 3rd Medicine Valley, under an old tree, Guan held the 7 Stars mirror, using it like a fan, relaxing blissfully. Sitting opposite him, Lu Xianyi's complexion was ugly, his hand holding the ghost stones, unable to make a move for a long time. Stealing the 5 elements and 9-fingered Divine Lord sat aside, both revealing sincere smiles. A being in the 9 layers of heaven and earth flying immortal realm, and still less than 70,000 years old, was definitely a top-notch genius of the current era. Even stealing the 5 elements, who was also in the 9 layers of heaven and earth flying immortal realm, felt a dangerous aura from Lu Xianyi. After learning to play Go, Lu Xianyi was able to beat stealing the 5 elements on the same day. After losing the position of the 2nd best Go player in the world, stealing the 5 elements had always been displeased with Lu Xianyi. Today he finally got to see Lu Xianyi get put in his place. Suddenly Lu Xianyi raised his eyes to look at Guan and asked in a deep voice, "Impossible. Who exactly are you?" While Go is indeed exquisite, he felt that the reason the other party could win was because they anticipated his next move. This suggests what? That the opponent's deductive abilities were stronger than his own. His talent and comprehension might not be considered top-notch in the Holy Court, but he still believed he was a genius. He refused to believe that Guan's comprehension exceeded his own. There's only one possibility. This person is hiding their true cultivation level. After hearing this, Guan said with a proud smile, "I'll tell you, I am Sword Venerable Fudao. Do you believe that? Kid, you can't even recognize the immortal path supreme treasures in my hand and on my head. Yet you aim to see through my cultivation level?" On hearing Guan's words, Lu Xianyi suddenly stood up and quickly bowed with clasped hands towards Guan, stealing the 5 elements, 9-fingered Divine Lord, and those around them were taken aback for a moment, then burst into laughter. Lu Xianyi looked up, confused. What was so funny about that? Weren't these people afraid of offending Sword Venerable Fudao? 9-fingered Divine Lord could not help but laugh and say, "Young brother, you can inquire around if you wish. This lad is only in his 200s. How could he possibly be Sword Venerable Fudao?" Sword Venerable Fudao became famous over 100 years ago. On hearing this, Lu Xianyi looked at Guan in disbelief. Now he naturally didn't believe that Guan was Sword Venerable Fudao. What can be accomplished in 200 years? With talent like his, he could at most cultivate to the mystic heart realm. What is a realm before nirvana worth? No different from ants. Even if they said Sword Venerable Fudao was 200 years old, he wouldn't believe it. Sword Venerable Fudao must definitely be an existence that transcends the carefree primordial immortal. You. Lu Xianyi stared at Guan, quite angry. Guan stood up and said, "Someone is looking for me, you guys continue playing." Having said that, he slipped away. Lu Xianyi watched his retreating figure, unable to let go for a long time. Luckily, this guy didn't harbor enmity toward Guan, otherwise he would have been extinguished this evening. Stealing the 5 elements immediately took the seat that Guan had vacated and said, "Let's continue. I think I have figured out your game." Lu Xianyi took a deep breath and could only sit down. He knew that Guan, being the Valley Master, couldn't escape, and he refused to believe that he couldn't beat a mere mortal in a game. Guan was not using an excuse. Someone was indeed looking for him. He waited at the base of his own attic. After a while, a figure flew into the valley. It was Xiantianyi. "Big brother, long time no see." Guan exclaimed with joy. Xiantianyi was as spirited as ever. He patted Guan on the shoulder and observed him closely, praising, "You learned to dress up, you have a bit of my aura. But your cultivation hasn't increased, you're disgracing me." Lu Xianyi, who was playing Go downstairs, heard this and immediately dismissed his doubts. Someone who could greet a junior cultivator of the Mahayana realm as a brother. Could that be some profound master? It seems this lad's invention of Go really is based on unique insights. Guan took Xiantianyi upstairs to catch up. Once inside, Xiantianyi began to recount his experiences over the years. He too had dealt with divine exotic resentful ghosts, and had a wealth of experiences. Guan listened intently, sometimes shocked, which pleased Xiantianyi. He liked chatting with this younger brother. So invigorating. Xiantianyi mentioned Liya and Hao, especially Hao, whose tone was filled with envy. He truly understood what an unmatched genius was. Compared to Hao, his own talent seemed mediocre. And he had also learned that Hao's master was Sword Venerable Fudao. What? His master is, no wonder, no wonder. Guan marveled. The attic was protected by Xiantianyi's restrictions, so they didn't worry about the disciples overhearing. As for the likes of stealing the 5 elements, even if they did hear, what of it? If they dared to plot against Hao, Guan wouldn't consider their friendship over Go. After Great Cold Demon Sect withdrew, the sea became chaotic since quite a number of forces had escaped previously, freeing up a lot of maritime and land resources. And the Star Sea congregations are also vying with others over them, Xiantianyi reflected. Although many years had passed, bringing up that event still excited him. Sword Venerable Fudao truly gave the Supreme Sect glory. While Xian Tiany's heart lay with the supreme sect, he belonged to the Star Sea congregations. The two thus chatted passionately. Meanwhile, after beating stealing the 5 elements, Lu Xianyi stood up and left, ignoring stealing the 5 elements requests for another match. He wandered around the valley, and his attention was captured by Shinxinzi. The Bitter Sea Buddha sect. Lu Xianyi seemed to have an idea, but he quickly shifted his gaze, with no intention of approaching Shinxinzi. He observed everyone in the valley. This medicine valley was too peculiar. The inhabitants were either terrifyingly weak or concealed immortals, with an enormous disparity. Suddenly, his gaze was again drawn to one person, and this time, his eyes latched on. Following his line of sight, it was Yang Jian who was weeding. Due to the vast gulf in their cultivation, Yang Jian, who had his back to Lu Xianyi, did not detect anything unusual, until a voice came from behind him. "What is your name?" Yang Jian subconsciously stood up and turned around. He had seen Lu Xianyi from a distance before and knew that the other party had an important status, and was not a simple cultivator. "My name is Yang Jian. May I know what matter brings you here, senior?" Yang Jian bowed with clasped hands, striking a balance between respect and not coming across as obsequious. Yang Jian. Lu Xianyi mused, recalling having heard this name before. It was mentioned by 2 Supreme Sect disciples in conversation, with one claiming that true Lord Erlang, Yang Jian, was more formidable than the great sage equaling heaven. The two even quarreled about it in the end. Chapter 307. Millennium Summit. Yang Jian knew from Lu Xiany's expression that he had heard of Journey to the West, but hadn't read it, plus his demeanor suggested he most likely came from overseas. He immediately took out a book from his pocket and handed it to Lu Xianyi. "This is my favorite book, the most extraordinary book ever, a gift for you, my elder." Upon hearing this, Lu Xianyi quickly reached out to accept it, even bowing gratefully, which made Yang Jian feel vigilant. What's going on? Did this fellow realize he was concealing his cultivation level? Seeing the change in Yang Jian's eyes, Lu Xianyi spoke. "Thanks, I'll go read this book now since I have nothing else to do." With that, he turned and left. Yang Jian watched him walk away, thought for a moment, and continued weeding. It wasn't until the evening that Xian Tiany finally left. Guan looked at the book on the table, his face full of anticipation. The latest Green Hero travelogue. Xian Tiany truly was a saint in his eyes. Despite the chaos in recent years, that youngster still managed to write a book. You should know the Green Hero travelogue is adapted from real experiences and focuses on romantic plots, implying that these years Xian Tiany had incurred more romantic debts. Guan took a deep breath and then picked up the Green Hero travelogue with both hands. The moon outside the window was full, and the valley was filled with the continuous sound of insects, making the atmosphere more enjoyable for reading. It wasn't just him reading in the valley, Lu Xianyi was also in his guest room reading. Lu Xianyi held Journey to the West in one hand, his brow furrowed, and his other hand was calculating something. 7 days later, Guan rode the blood prison Great Saint to Tianya Valley to pick medicinal herbs. Only Luohan, Lv and 3 monkey demons were there. Iluyan, Jirualai, and Li Lingtian hadn't returned. Above the clouds, Lu Xianyi looked down at Tianya Valley, his brow tightly knit. Listening to the exchange between Guan and Luohan, he finally let down his guard. This youngster providing the supreme sect with grass and serving the dynasty as a laborer, with hardly a grand background, was exactly why he was so humble. Lu Xianyi turned and left, planning to visit the supreme sect. He had heard that investiture of the gods could be linked with Journey to the West, and he wanted to see what investiture of the gods was about. As Guan continued weeding, the corner of his mouth curled upward. Beside him, Luohan continued asking, "What have you considered?" "Let's not. I really don't want to leave the supreme sect. Thank the emperor and the crown prince for their kindness on my behalf, but I won't be going to the imperial city," Guan replied. Luohan smiled and said, "The crown prince always talks about defeating Yang Jian. He's been cultivating hard these years. He even received pointers from a great cultivator from the ocean. You better prepare Yang Jian." Guan nodded. "Sure, old Luo, you've aged." "Aged? Why would you say that?" You've become more and more long-winded. You used to talk less when you borrowed the Green Hero Travelogue. You dare mention that, without a new volume of Green Hero Travelogue, the supreme secret records you asked me to find still haven't appeared. Read more of The Journey to the West and cultivate your mind. Guan kept weeding while bantering with Luo Hun. Days continued to pass. Autumn left, and winter arrived. Snow began to fly. One day, while reading in the 8 scenic caves, Guan suddenly sensed something and immediately took out a green jade, the mortal jade of the Mortal World Peak, a symbol of a peak master and also a magic artifact. He sent his divine thought into it, and soon learned that the Millennium Peak meeting was about to start. He thought for a moment, stood up, and disappeared from the spot. The mortal jade had a directional guide inside, but Guan didn't need it. He had already found the location of Mortal World Peak. Mortal World Peak was very distant from the Supreme Sect, situated over an ocean covered in thick fog. There were no islands or continents, only towering peaks rising straight from the ocean floor into the clouds. Guan appeared at the edge of Mortal World Peak, and then proceeded forward through the clouds. It wasn't long before he saw the figures of cultivators, more and more of them all heading in the same direction. Guan didn't speed up, flying at a leisurely pace, enjoying the scenery along the way. He was considering, now as a peak master, whether to plant medicinal herbs on his own peak. Arriving at Mortal World Peak, he couldn't rely entirely on picking his own herbs, as that would be too suspicious. After all, here, he was a heaven and earth flying immortal. Taoist friend, please wait. A voice came from behind, and Guan stopped and turned to look. He saw 2 cultivators approaching on swords, a man and a woman, both at the Nirvana realm. Guan performed a lifespan detection. The man was named Su Ruahai and the woman Su Shi. Their ultimate lifespans were not outstanding, but also not mediocre. The 2 approached Guan, and Su Ruahai took the initiative to raise his hand in greeting. I am Su Ruahai, this is my sister Su Shi. May I ask for your honored name, Taoist friend? Guan returned the greeting. I am Meng Lang. May I know what brings the 2 of you here? Su Ruahai smiled. Taoist friend, are you also here to pay respects at Mortal World Peak? We are siblings too. Why don't we keep each other company? Although he couldn't see through Guan's cultivation level, Guan didn't appear dangerous to him, and he observed Guan flying leisurely, looking around as if it were his first visit. Su Shi, examining Guan, quickly averted her gaze when Guan looked at her, her earlobes turning slightly red. Interesting, embarrassed after living over 8,000 years? Guan thought to himself and then nodded. Su Ruahai became even more enthusiastic, and the 3 chatted as they flew. Guan asked them about their understanding of Mortal World Peak, reassuring Su Ruahai that it was indeed Guan's first visit. Su Shi didn't talk much, mostly Su Ruahai spoke, with her occasionally interjecting. Through them, Guan gained a clearer understanding of Mortal World Peak. At the same time, he thought about the siblings he had met towards the end of Xiao Shengshen's life, recalling their adventures, which made him feel somewhat regretful and endearing Su Ruahai and Su Shi to him. An hour later, the 3 passed through dense fog, and their eyes were drawn to a gigantic peak ahead. An incredibly majestic peak even larger than any they had encountered along the way. Its diameter at the base was at least 1,000 miles, shooting straight into the sky, its top invisible. The surface of this mountain was densely wooded, full of vitality, and cultivators from all directions were flying toward this mountain. Upon arriving here, the surroundings became noisy, with roars of demon pets and mounts in the distance. Su Ruahai looked up, feeling moved. Truly worthy of Mortal World Peak, one of the oldest schools in the world. I've wanted to join Mortal World Peak since I was young. I wonder if it'll pass smoothly. Guan laughed. With your cultivation level, you should be fine, no need to worry. Su Ruahai laughed bitterly. Brother Meng, you don't understand the requirements of Mortal World Peak for aptitude. Ha ha ha, Taoist friend Meng, you finally arrived. A hearty laugh interrupted Su Ruahai. Guan knew without looking up that it was Baizia who had come. He had intentionally leaked a hint of heaven and earth flying immortal aura earlier. Su Ruahai and Su Shi might not have noticed, but Baizia, who had been waiting for him, picked it up quickly. Baizia descended from the sky, grabbing Guan's hand, eager to move on. If you hadn't come, your position as Peak Master would have been taken. Baizia huffed. Guan quickly said, I'd like to bring them along. Baizia glanced at Suruahai and Sushi, nodding slightly. Suruahai and Sushi were stunned. Peak Master's position? Had they heard right? Chapter 308. Unable to contact Guan saw that Suruahai and his sibling were still in a daze, so he immediately rolled up his sleeves, took them into his palm, and followed Baizia to fly upwards. That scene caused Baizia to raise an eyebrow and laugh. Daoist friend Meng, you have impressive divine skills. In the eyes of Suruahai and his sibling, it was not that they had become smaller, but Guan and Suruahai had become gigantic, a visual impact so shocking that it left the siblings speechless and wide-eyed. Listening to Guan and Baizia chatting and laughing, Sushi came back to her senses and looked at Suruahai, asking carefully, Brother, just now the senior mentioned Meng Dao. Is he a Peak Master? She naturally knew what being a Peak Master meant. In Mortal World Peak, a Peak Master wielded immense power and symbolized the status of a strong individual, someone of legendary status. Turbulent waves rose in Suruahai's heart as he tried to maintain his composure, slightly nodding his head without making a sound. He carefully recalled the previous interactions and realized he hadn't offended the other party, who had even comforted him about successfully entering Mortal World Peak. A light shone in Suruahai's eyes, his heart beginning to race with excitement, his hands clenched into fists inside his sleeves. At the same time, Baizia began to explain the situation of the Millennium Summit. Although it was called the Millennium Summit, it was not actually fixed at an interval of 10,000 years. It had been 20,000 years since the last summit, and Baizia, having returned rarely, discussed holding it with the other Peak Masters. The opening of the Millennium Summit would not only recruit new disciples, but also invite other friendly forces. Before the opening of the Millennium Summit, Baizia would take Guan to choose an unclaimed divine peak. Mortal World Peak had many peaks, divided by rank from low to high. Sea Peak, Immortal Peak, Divine Peak, and Main Peak, the latter being the highest level with only one. There were 25 divine peaks, and the hard standard for a master of a divine peak was the heaven and earth flying immortal realm. Guan was curious. How could there be a shortage of divine peak masters? Baizia replied that many heaven and earth flying immortals wanted to adventure beyond the outer heaven, so they would make room if they wanted to leave. After hearing this, Guan didn't react too strongly, making Baizia sigh in relief. It looked like he had successfully bluffed Guan. He had made outer heaven seem so dangerous because he wanted Guan to stay in the great heavenly spirit land. Besides, someone like Guan, who had no powerful backing and could cultivate to the heaven and earth flying immortal realm in solitude, was undoubtedly an unimaginable talent. Even without going to outer heaven, he could still advance. The two kept flying upwards until the azure sky vanished, replaced by the dazzling starry sky. Suruahai and Sushi, standing in the palm of Guan's hand, looked up, immersed in the vastness of the universe. Guan followed Baizia into a grand hall, placing Suruahai and Sushi on the ground, asking them to follow behind him. The grand hall was spacious, with giant majestic statues lined up on both sides, and the ceiling was engraved with various grand scenes. Suruahai and Sushi proceeded cautiously, not daring to make a sound. Staying close behind Guan moving forward, Guan saw 25 bluish-purple crystal columns, with the power of rules surging within, containing countless restrictions. It seemed that Mortal World Peak might be hiding a divine immortal of wondrous dharma. Even a carefree primordial immortal would find it difficult to construct such crystal columns. Baizia stopped walking and pointed to two adjacent crystal columns. These two divine peaks are open for choice, known as Chengtian Peak and Dingtian Peak. He began to introduce Chengtian Peak and Dingtian Peak. Chengtian Peak had over 1 million disciples, and its height was moderate since it had a long history, so the disciples' cultivation levels were generally strong. The height of Dingtian Peak was second among the divine peaks. Because it had experienced internal strife, there was a gap in the disciples' cultivation, with most of them below the level of loose immortals, and resources were also scarce, with many areas left idle. Currently, the number of disciples on Dingtian Peak was just over 200,000. Guan immediately spoke up. Then Dingtian Peak it shall be. I will see to its improvement and contribute to Mortal World Peak. Upon hearing this, Baizia looked at Guan with newfound respect. Afterward, Baizia asked Guan to bring out the mortal jade and place it on the crystal column. Having done all this, they proceeded to other palaces for a tedious process to unlock Guan's rights on Dingtian Peak. Su Ruahai and Su Shi also registered in the process, becoming disciples of Dingtian Peak. An hour later, Baizia took Guan and the siblings to Dingtian Peak, then left. He didn't support Guan's position. Jokingly, did a heaven and earth flying immortal even need someone to stand up for them? Who would dare to stir up trouble? That would be courting death. In Mortal World Peak, disciples were not allowed to defile the Peak Master. Su Ruahai and Su Shi looked with excitement at the majestic Dingtian Peak. Guan looked at them and asked with a smile, "From now on, how should you address me?" Su Ruahai quickly bowed and offered his respects. This disciple, Su Ruahai, greets Master. Su Shi recovered her senses and followed suit, greeting him as Master. Guan smiled, then revealed the aura of the heaven and earth flying immortal, enveloping Dingtian Peak. Only at this moment did Su Ruahai and his sibling truly feel the strength of Guan. The three flew to the summit. Shortly after, 9 wandering immortals came to greet them. Guan, without a second word, displayed his mortal jade. The 9 wandering immortals showed delight and paid their respects, referring to Guan as Master respectfully. Guan threw a lifespan detection at them. Their lifespans were healthy, able to work for him for many years. The eldest disciple of Dingtian Peak was named Zhu Xinglan, possessing the 9th layer of the wandering immortal realm cultivation, seemingly only a step away from the heaven and earth flying immortal realm. But it was an insurmountable gap for most wandering immortals. Guan dismissed the other disciples and had Zhu Xinglan accompany him alone, while he already had someone arrange the Su siblings. Zhu Xinglan was refined in appearance, looking to be in his 40s, dressed in a green robe, with a black and white beard, his demeanor calm and imposing as he stroked his beard. Guan asked him to give him a tour around Dingtian Peak. Before long, 2 hours had passed. After settling into his new residence, Guan prepared to leave. Before departing, he gave Zhu Xinglan a large amount of crystal stones to buy medicinal herbs to cultivate on Dingtian Peak, making Zhu Xinglan extremely excited, feeling the arrival of a magnificent Peak Master. Returning to 3rd Medicine Valley, Guan transformed from the high and mighty Peak Master of Mortal World Peak to an ordinary Valley Master of Supreme Sect. In the evening, Guan found stealing the 5 elements and 9-fingered Divine Lord, who were still playing chess, truly a waste of time. Guan curiously asked, "Where did Shinshinzi go?" 9-fingered Divine Lord casually responded, "I heard he went to the Millennium Summit of Mortal World Peak. He just left not long ago." Mortal World Peak. MHM, an ancient Qi fortune sect. Don't bother poking your nose into it. You won't encounter it in this lifetime. It's a sect much more powerful than the Great Cold Demon sect. 9-fingered Divine Lord casually replied, prompting Guan to stare at him. Then he turned and walked away. Stealing the 5 elements, then said with a smile, "That's not necessarily true. If he could invent this game, I think he might encounter great opportunities in the future. Who knows? You're so powerful, yet I haven't seen you help him." 9-fingered Divine Lord replied, and although he had grown familiar with Guan, he had no intention of changing Guan's destiny. With Guan's talent, even if he was taken to a great sect, it might not be for the best. At least here, Guan could live effortlessly, live happily. Guan, hearing their conversation, thought to himself with a hint of amusement, "If I revealed my realm, you might have never even heard of it." Guan hummed, and went to chat with Ji Xiaoyu. With some time left before the Millennium Summit, Guan was in no rush to head there. Days later, Guan came to Immortal Seeking Island, and made his final deal with the island master. Henceforth, Immortal Seeking Island would belong to him. Due to the calamity brought by the Great Cold Demon sect, the forces behind the island master had already withdrawn, not willing to look back, and could only sell it off to gain as much as possible. Before leaving, the island master said to Guan, "You had better have your backing force send a wandering immortal here. Otherwise you won't be able to keep order." Guan nodded with a smile. After the island master and his people had left, Guan turned to Hu Xiaojian and said with a smile, "From now on, Immortal Seeking Island is mine, and I won't treat you unfairly." Hu Xiaojian immediately knelt down, banging his head on the ground in excitement. Afterward, Guan summoned the elders of Sea Protection Mansion, briefly instructed them, and upon hearing that Guan would arrange for a wandering immortal to come later, all the elders' expressions became respectful, no longer daring to underestimate him. Guan wasn't just boasting. There were wandering immortals on Dingtian Peak, and he could easily arrange for one. After all, he was using the identity of Meng Lang on Immortal Seeking Island. Time flew swiftly by. Until the Spring Festival had passed, the Millennium Summit of Mortal World Peak was finally about to begin. Above the sea of clouds, Holy Mother of Western Spirit stood on a lotus throne, moving swiftly, with Lu Lingjun standing beside her, and a small snake lying on her shoulder, the White Spirit Demon Emperor who had ascended with her. Lu Lingjun's beautiful eyes widened as she saw the peaks through the clouds, feeling as though she was witnessing the immortal realm of mortals. The White Spirit Demon Emperor flicked its tongue curiously and asked, "How does Mortal World Peak compare to the Great Cold Demon Sect in terms of strength?" Upon hearing this, Lu Lingjun couldn't help but look toward Holy Mother of Western Spirit, curiosity gleaming in her eyes. She could not forget the sight of the Great Cold Demon Sect surrounding the continent. At that time, it felt like the Great Cold Demon Sect was invincible. In terms of historical heritage, Mortal World Peak is stronger, and Mortal World Peak also has considerable power within the Holy Court. Even we, the Bitter Sea Buddha sect, cannot compare. Holy Mother of Western Spirit replied, her face calm. Lu Lingjun and the White Spirit Demon Emperor could feel the might of Mortal World Peak even more. Holy Mother of Western Spirit continued speaking of Mortal World Peak's past. While listening, Lu Lingjun gazed into the distance, her anticipation for the upcoming Millennium Summit growing. Passing through layers of clouds, they observed the peaks along the way, their eyes never resting. Gradually, more figures of cultivators appeared in their view, all invited monks or demons from great sects, each with extraordinary presence. Neither Lu Lingjun nor the White Spirit Demon Emperor had reached the Mahayana realm, yet the cultivators and demons they encountered along the way were much stronger than them, causing an instinctive feeling of nervousness and discomfort. But they were ascenders, certainly not cowards. Ambition grew within them. One day, they too would arrive invited, rather than relying on others. Lu Lingjun couldn't help but think of Guan, the young man who had written the Immortal God book. If he could see this spectacle, would certainly be inspired even more. Too bad, with Guan's talent and temperament, he probably would never reach such a place in his lifetime. Chapter 309. The Invincible Heavenly Demon Great Emperor at the summit of Mortal World Peak. In a courtyard at the mountain's top, Guan gathered with a group of heaven and earth flying immortals. Everyone present was either a peak master or main peak elder of Mortal World Peak. The courtyard was simple and not very expansive, filled with various flowers and trees, and the faint scent of sandalwood lingered in the air. Guan was exchanging pleasantries with everyone. No matter how high one's realm might be, social interaction is inevitable. Guan did not resist it. After all, he intended to stay at Mortal World Peak for the long term. This place was destined to become an important source of lifespan for him. Overall, the atmosphere was harmonious, with no apparent scheming or rivalry in sight. The master of the main peak, just as Guan had guessed, was none other than a carefree primordial immortal, and not of a low realm at that. Eternal Taoist Lord, carefree primordial immortal level 6267907/78000/1500000, a maximum lifespan of 1,500,000 years. Exceeding Shenzhen's 999,999 years, suggested reaching the carefree primordial immortal realm, heralded a transformation in the limit of one's lifespan. With just level 6 of carefree immortal achieving 780,000 years of lifespan, the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma must certainly surpass 1,000,000 years, and the higher Tao void mysterious immortals would have lifespans of several million years, or even more. Guan was unable to even estimate how long the divine thought true immortals had lived. They were ancient beings to him. Compared with them, Guan was like an infant. After rotating through interactions with each person, Guan became a listener. The Millennial Peak meeting would host a banquet to exchange insights with the higher echelons of various sects and also conduct peak combat competitions. The first aim was to promote healthy internal competition, and the second was to demonstrate Mortal World Peak's strength to the world. As for recruiting disciples, that was just a side matter. With Mortal World Peak's current foundations, they hardly cared about the number of new disciples. After a while, the high-level meeting of Mortal World Peak adjourned, and Guan flew off alone toward Dingtian Peak. He spread his divine thought, and already caught sight of Lu Lingjun and Shinxinzi. Shinxinzi was not a concern, for with his 9th layer wandering immortal realm cultivation, he was treated well wherever he went. However, Lu Lingjun, who was only at the Mystic Heart realm, couldn't enjoy the same treatment. Without the Holy Mother of Western Spirit accompanying her, Lu Lingjun had to stay inside her temporary residence. She was living atop a mountain peak with a broad view. Many cultivators and demons who passed by cast surprised glances at her, which made the color of her cheeks unpleasant. Guan glanced at the situation briefly before taking his gaze back, not taking much interest in it. Upon returning to Dingtian Peak, Guan wandered around leisurely as no disciples recognized him along the way. There were many winding mountain paths on Dingtian Peak. Along the way, he saw courtyards of disciples, some growing flowers and plants, some with empty yards, and others raising demon beasts and insects, providing an entertaining stroll for him. Dingtian Peak had several mountain cities, akin to the fortresses of the Supreme Sect, where nearly anything one wished for could be purchased, except that these cities weren't as crowded as those of the Supreme Sect. As Guan passed by a mountain city, a voice reached him, its tone filled with surprise. "Master." Guan turned his head to see Sushi approaching briskly. Upon seeing Guan, her ears reddened and she shyly lowered her head, reminding Guan of an Exian. But an Exian was not shy, she was gentle. Guan smiled and asked, "Where's your brother? Why are you here alone?" Sushi, still keeping her head down and holding her sleeves, softly answered, "He went to Debating Peak. He wants to see if he can meet any acquaintances or clansmen." Debating Peak was specially prepared for receiving Mortal World Peak's guests, and the current Millennial Peak meeting had brought the quiet Debating Peak to life. Guan, seeing her in this state, smiled broader. He then took out a secret book and handed it to Sushi, saying, "Meeting is destiny. Consider this spell book a welcome gift. You may pass it on to Suruahai as well." Sushi looked up, instinctively stepping back and waved her hand, saying, "If not for Master, we might not have been able to join Mortal World Peak. How can we accept another spell book? We will train diligently and earn spell books with our efforts." Guan gave her a stern look and said, "Then what kind of master am I? Take it." Sushi had no choice but to accept. Seeing her at a loss, Guan then chuckled and said, "If you feel bad, how about doing me a favor? Have you been busy lately?" Sushi quickly shook her head, replying, not busy at all. Go to Debating Peak, to the dwelling of the Bitter Sea Buddha sect. Look for a person named Lu Lingjun. Keep her company wherever she wants to go these days. If she asks, just say it's arranged by your master. Do not reveal my name. If she has any requests that you can fulfill, help her out. Your master won't let you suffer for it," Guan instructed, then raised his hand to project the image of Lu Lingjun into Su Zai's mind. Sushi hesitated for a moment before accepting the task. With a wave from Guan, she bowed respectfully and took her leave. Watching Sushi leave, Guan smiled to himself. Arranging this was partly to help Lu Lingjun broaden her horizons, and also to train Sushi a bit. This had been a spur-of-the-moment decision for him. Guan continued his descent down the mountain, enjoying the scenery along the way. In the courtyard, Lu Lingjun sat in front of a stone table, idly flipping through a book. Beside her, the white spirit demon emperor lay sprawled across the table. A figure descended from the sky, and Lu Lingjun instinctively looked up, then rose to her feet. "Lu Lingjun?" Sushi asked. Lu Lingjun subconsciously nodded, feeling somewhat uneasy. Sushi was wearing the Taoist robe of Mortal World Peak, her face beautiful, her posture dignified, and exuding an aura of immortality. In her presence, Lu Lingjun couldn't help but feel intimidated. The difference between them was like that between immortals and mortals. Although Sushi was shy in front of Guan, she was at ease facing Lu Lingjun. Precisely because of this serenity, the aura of Nirvana realm manifested, overwhelming Lu Lingjun of the mystic realm with pressure. Lu Lingjun's mind raced, wondering if she had offended someone. My master sent me to you. Do you have any places you'd like to go? I can accompany you. If you have any needs, you can ask me, until the end of the Millennial Peak meeting, Sushi continued. She was puzzled inwardly about why her master would take care of such a minor cultivator. She then thought, weren't she and her brother similar to this girl in her master's eyes? Perhaps this girl had also met her master on the road and caught his eye. May I ask who is the master of Senior? Lu Lingjun asked cautiously. Sushi responded, my master is the Peak Master of Dingtian Peak. The Peak Master of Dingtian Peak. As an ascender, Lu Lingjun couldn't keep her composure at this revelation, and the White Spirit Demon Emperor's eyes widened as well. Having been told by the Holy Mother of Western Spirit that the Peak Masters of Mortal World Peak were extraordinary beings, especially those of Divine Peaks, of which Dingtian Peak was one, Lu Lingjun couldn't fathom how such an exalted being would know of her. For a moment, Lu Lingjun felt nervous and unsettled. At dusk, Guan returned to Third Medicine Valley. Ji Xiaoyu came to greet him, curiously asking, where have you been these past 2 days? Guan replied, a Taoist friend of mine is hosting a banquet, and I have to attend as a guest. Ji Xiaoyu nodded, then said, I had another dream while cultivating today. Shall we talk about it? I don't want to get involved with your great karma. Guan thought helplessly, but he immediately said aloud, of course, no problem. They both ascended to the upper floor. After Ji Xiaoyu set up restrictions, only then did she sit down at the desk, frowning slightly as she said, I dreamed that I was in a dimly lit space surrounded by stars, some of them immensely vast. I was surrounded by many demons and fighting. Outer heaven. Having never been to outer heaven, the mortal spirits of this world couldn't imagine what it looked like, so Ji Xiaoyu could only describe it as a dimly lit space. Listening attentively, Guan quickly determined that Ji Xiaoyu's dream involved heavenly demons. Had she been to the silent destruction domain in a past life? He wasn't surprised. He had known for a long time that Ji Xiaoyu was no ordinary person. What puzzled him was not only that Ji Xiaoyu's previous lifetimes had battled with the heavenly demon army, but she also mentioned a terrifying being. This being commanded the heavenly demons. He said that no matter how many times I reincarnate, he would be waiting for me to challenge him. Ji Xiaoyu took a deep breath and said, the memory of the fierce battles in her dreams causing her to grip the teacup in her hands tightly. After a moment of thought, Guan comforted her. Don't worry, you won't be able to challenge him for many years, maybe not even in this lifetime. Anyway, I can't imagine how to slash a star so large with a single sword stroke. Although his words were a bit harsh, they indeed comforted Ji Xiaoyu. Just then a voice came. That is the heavenly demon emperor, who once single-handedly suppressed the great heavenly spirit land. The voice of stealing the 5 elements. As he spoke, he appeared out of nowhere inside the room. Ji Xiaoyu frowned but did not speak out. The identity of Reincarnation Path Emperor was revealed to them by stealing the 5 elements, so Guan did not stop him from entering. Suppress the great heavenly spirit land? How strong must that be? Guan cautiously asked. With a grave expression, stealing the 5 elements replied, very strong, unimaginably so. Even the Reincarnation Path Emperor once mentioned to me that her destiny was to challenge the heavenly demon emperor, but she soon reincarnated, and her fate entered the cycle of reincarnation. Guan pressed on. You mean the heavenly demon emperor won't attack our realm actively? Correct. The establishment of the Holy Court has kept the heavenly demons' ravages at bay. As long as the Tao level of Xingtian remains intact, there's no way for the heavenly demon emperor to reach us. The being behind me has also been to the land of the heavenly demons, and was cursed as a result. It's a place of utter horror, beyond my comprehension. However, seeing her growth rate in this life, It will be hard to encounter heavenly demons without 30,000 years, said Stealing the Five Elements, casting a glance at Ji Xiaoyu. Guan did not speak further, but adopted a shocked expression. It was entirely normal for a mortal to be shocked upon hearing of the existence of heavenly demons, or so Stealing the Five Elements thought Guan should seem. After hearing this, Ji Xiaoyu returned to calm. Stealing the Five Elements continued to describe the might of the heavenly demons. A good while later he left. The room fell silent. Guan sighed and said, "He said that not even the sword Venerable Fu Dao could defeat the heavenly demon emperor. This is a good thing. At least you don't have to worry for now." Looking at him, Ji Xiaoyu's gaze was serene as she said, "I had hoped to lead a peaceful life and pass away peacefully, but after what he said, I suddenly don't want to die. I want to cultivate to the level where I can meet that heavenly demon emperor." Taken aback, Guan replied, "Having a larger goal is certainly a good thing." Ji Xiaoyu rose from her seat and turned to leave. Just as she reached the door, she turned her head back and said, "Why don't you give up either? I've dreamed of many people. Some started from nothing and ended up shining brilliantly. If you could be by my side to fight the heavenly demon emperor, wouldn't that be wonderful?" With that, she turned her head and pushed the door to leave. Chapter 310 Why don't you give your place to me, heavenly demon great emperor? Guan looked at the moon outside the window, his lips curving into a smile. If Ji Xiaoyu really could achieve it, according to Stealing the Five Elements, she would need to cultivate for 30,000 years. 30,000 years. I wouldn't even know how terrifying I would become by then. The mere heavenly demon great emperor, easily squashed. By then, I'll pretend to be weaker than Ji Xiaoyu, let her fight strenuously, and step in when she almost can't hold on. The thought is quite exhilarating. Guan even laughed at the thought, choosing not to get up and close the door, but instead pulling out a book to read. The Millennium Peak Conference had begun with cultivators of various ranks competing near the debating peak, making it a lively place. During these days, with Su Zai's company, Lu Lingjun explored Mortal World Peak, greatly broadening his horizons, and their relationship had also grown closer, though Lu Lingjun still addressed Su Shi as his senior. The competitions between peaks continued for half a month, with Gu An's Dingtian Peak ranking third from last among the divine peaks, which he didn't feel too strongly about since the disciples of Dingtian Peak were used to it. That day, the grand banquet of the Millennium Peak Conference began, with tables set up all around the debating peak. Guan then attended the banquet under the starlit sky, the banquet located above a sea of clouds equipped with a powerful formation, only accessible to those at least in the heaven and earth flying immortal realm. Shen Xinzi of the wandering immortal realm couldn't participate, which actually relieved Guan. If Shen Xinzi had come, he wouldn't have attended. There were hundreds of heaven and earth flying immortals, and over 10 carefree primordial immortals at the cloud banquet, with Guan standing beside Bai Zia listening to him introduce the guests. The participating forces numbered over 20, including even cultivators from the Holy Court. The atmosphere was harmonious, and Guan was enjoying the feast. The exquisite delicacies here were truly exceptional, with just one bite enough to save mortals decades of hard cultivation. With Bai Zia's help, Guan got acquainted with quite a few heaven and earth flying immortals. An ancient hour later, a carefree primordial immortal suddenly walked to the middle of the cloud banquet, laughing as he spoke. "Taoist Lord, I wish to join Mortal World Peak. May I ask if that's permissible?" Upon these words, everyone turned to look at him. The peak master of Mortal World Peak's main peak, Everlasting Taoist Lord, looked towards him and laughed. "Mo Hen, although you've left the great cold demon sect for tens of thousands of years, can you really sever all ties given your sect's current crisis?" Other carefree primordial immortals followed with light jabs at Mo Hen. Mentioning the great cold demon sect invariably brought up Sword Venerable Fu Dao. But Mo Hen wasn't upset. He looked at Everlasting Taoist Lord and cheerfully said, "I've long severed those ties. It's normal for that group of useless people to be annihilated. Don't provoke me, Sword Venerable Fu Dao isn't someone I can afford to antagonize. I advise you all to speak well, and avoid substantial karmic retribution." Hearing this, Other carefree primordial immortals stopped making fun of him. Even they did so, not to mention the heaven and earth flying immortals. Though all were present at the banquet, the division of hierarchy was clear, and heaven and earth flying immortals were definitely not the protagonists. Everlasting Taoist Lord pondered and said, "The position of the Peak Master of Chengtian Peak is still vacant. Would you accept that?" Mo Hen shook his head and said, "I set my sights on Dingtian Peak." He then turned and looked towards Guan in the crowd, smiling. "Dingtian Peak's Peak Master. How about you cede your position to me?" All eyes were now on Guan. Before Guan could speak, Zia angrily said, "What do you mean by this? Bullying the weak?" Guan looked at Zia, not expecting him to be so aggressive. He's got quite the backing. Mo Hen wasn't upset, and chuckled. There was internal strife on Dingtian Peak back then, and a good friend of mine died there. I'm just being nostalgic. Yet his tone obviously left no room for negotiation. Suddenly, the banquet fell silent. Zia looked towards Everlasting Taoist Lord. Carefree primordial immortals seemed amused by the situation, while the heaven and earth flying immortals looked at Guan sympathetically. They all knew Guan had just become the Peak Master of Dingtian Peak, and now, just days later, he was being asked to vacate his position, which must be hard to accept. Guan remained silent, while everyone thought he was weighing his options. In reality, he was feeling sentimental. My ties with the Great Cold Demon sect are truly cursed. Is this to continue the karma? To make me completely annihilate the Great Cold Demon sect? Guan felt no pressure, being the strongest person present with a cultivation level 2 major realms higher than anyone else. What was there to fear? He wanted to see the attitude of Everlasting Taoist Lord. If Everlasting Taoist Lord didn't defend him, then there was no reason to stay in Mortal World Peak. As for Mo Hen, a bad ending was inevitable. Everlasting Taoist Lord slowly said, "That won't do, choose another one." His tone was unquestionable and very firm, giving the great cultivators of Mortal World Peak a sense of backbone. Regardless, Mo Hen was an outsider, and although the combat power of a carefree primordial immortal was important, it didn't give him the right to do whatever he pleased. If Meng Lang were kicked out today, tomorrow it could be any of them. Mo Hen shook his head. "Don't be hasty. What if this young friend agrees?" The term young friend was filled with disdain. His gaze turned to Guan. "Young friend, if you cede your position to me, I won't let you suffer losses. You can ask for anything." Guan replied, "Thanks for your kind offer, senior, but no need. I'm not the type who likes to change nests." Everyone's expression changed slightly, none expecting Guan to defy Mo Hen, Everlasting Taoist Lord included. At this level of cultivation, recklessness was impossible unless facing a lower-level cultivator. Mo Hen's smile disappeared instantly, his face darkening as he said, "I can give Taoist Lord face, but have you considered the consequences of offending me?" Everlasting Taoist Lord frowned, appearing suddenly in front of Guan, looked at Mo Hen, and said coldly, "Taoist friend, you are going too far." Mo Hen stared at Guan with a cruel smile, blatantly threatening him. Mo Hen harbors hostility towards you, despising you deeply. Would you like to conduct a lifespan detection on him? This constitutes deep hatred? Typical of a demon cultivator, heartless and ruthless. Sigh. Guan sighed deeply, attracting everyone's attention. He walked past Everlasting Taoist Lord towards Mo Hen. "What are you doing?" Zia hastily grabbed Guan. Since Zia had brought Guan into Mortal World Peak, he felt dishonored and angry over Guan being bullied. Everlasting Taoist Lord spoke. "Meng Lang in Mortal World Peak, no one can harm you. And should anyone cause you harm outside, Mortal World Peak will not simply let it go." Guan smiled at Zia, then broke free from his grip, turning towards Everlasting Taoist Lord to bow respectfully, before continuing towards Mo Hen. Mo Hen laughed, not expecting this young man to actually walk towards him. "You called me Mo Hen, right? Why must you force me?" Guan shrugged and spread his hands, his expression one of helplessness. His steps didn't stop, suddenly erupting with a terrifying aura, causing everyone's complexion to change drastically, including Mo Hen's. With each step Guan took, his aura surged, quickly surpassing the heaven and earth flying immortal realm, and continuing to rise. How is this possible? A carefree primordial immortal widened his eyes in disbelief. Others were similarly shocked, and Wuxia was dumbfounded. When Guan reached Emohen, his aura had reached the 9th layer of the carefree primordial immortal realm, with the strongest present only at the 6th layer, and Emohen himself only at the 4th layer. Guan lifted his chin, looking down at Emohen asking, "How did you address me just now?" Emohen's face looked extremely unpleasant as Guan's aura completely overwhelmed him. The banquet fell into silence. You could hear a pin drop. The most alarming incident then occurred. Guan actually reached out and patted Emohen's wrinkled face. Though the gesture was gentle, to everyone watching, this was the making of a deadly feud. Chapter 311. A million years is far from enough. After Guan slapped him, Emohen's face showed disbelief. He had not expected Guan to be so audacious. Despite the gap in their cultivation levels, they both existed as carefree primordial immortals. Emohen clenched his teeth and asked, "Who exactly are you, and from which sect do you come?" Everyone else stared at Guan, waiting for his response. A heaven and earth flying immortal, who had just joined Mortal World Peak, was a carefree primordial immortal? Everyone felt it was absurd, and even suspected Guan had ulterior motives. At this moment, Wuxia could not help but entertain doubts, but upon rethinking, he recalled that it was he who had persuaded the individual to join Mortal World Peak, and it did not seem like a setup at that time. Guan fixed his gaze on Emohen and said, "Does that really matter? If I were merely an ordinary peak master of Mortal World Peak, how would you seek revenge on me?" As soon as Emohen exhibited hostility toward him, Guan had already marked him as a dead man in his heart. Guan's statement made Taoist Lord Yongnian narrow his eyes. After hearing this, Emohen's expression grew uglier, and for a moment he did not know how to respond. Could he also be aiming for Dingtian Peak? Emohen thought angrily in his heart, not considering it a coincidence. How could it be that a randomly chosen person turned out to be a great cultivator concealing his power? Now he found himself in a dilemma. Bowing his head in submission would not erase the karma, but refusing to do so would only worsen his situation. Suddenly, Emohen revealed a smile and said with a clasped fist, "If that's the case, I am even more convinced to join Mortal World Peak. As for Dingtian Peak, I no longer want it. Chengtian Peak is also fine." Upon hearing these words, most of the people present heaved a sigh of relief. Taoist Lord Yongnian spoke, "Forget it, Taoist friend, please go to another sect." Everyone was taken aback by his rapid change in attitude, and Emohen's face turned even uglier. Guan turned around to look at Taoist Lord Yongnian, saw him slightly nodding, and he couldn't help but smile. Very sensible, ha. Humph. Emohen let out a cold snort and left with a flick of his sleeves. Everyone urged him to stop, fearing he would stay and escalate the conflict. Guan raised his right hand, causing everyone to look at him, not understanding what he intended to do. 3 breaths later, Guan suddenly clenched his hand, then quickly put whatever it was into his sleeve, the movement so swift that no one saw what he had in his hand. "You have successfully seized 8,709 years of lifespan from Emohen, carefree primordial immortal realm, 4th layer." Looking at the prompt before him, Guan remained indifferent, feeling no sense of accomplishment. The surrounding carefree primordial immortals suddenly changed their demeanor. They looked at Guan with fear, realizing that Emohen's aura had suddenly vanished. The heaven and earth flying immortals were curious about what Guan had just grabbed. Guan moved next to Wuxia, and Taoist Lord Yongnian looked deeply at Guan, and then signaled for the cloud banquet to continue. Wuxia looked at Guan, wanting to say something but hesitated. Guan smiled and said, "By Taoist friend, shall things remain as they were before?" Wuxia subconsciously nodded, his demeanor becoming reserved. How could things be the same? Damn, that was frightening. Wuxia felt somewhat apprehensive in his heart, wondering if he would have been killed had he acted arrogantly in the beginning. He couldn't voice this question, but the answer was quite clear. At the subsequent banquet, Guan became the focus, with everyone enthusiastically interacting with him. a stark contrast to the earlier scene, even the carefree primordial immortals addressing him as a senior. At Debating Peak, a yard filled with tables where Lu Lingjun, the Holy Mother of the Western Spirit, and Sushi sat together, Shin Shinzi was at another table, engaging in a discussion on the principles of Buddhism. The Holy Mother of the Western Spirit looked at Sushi, curiously asking, "Miss Su, I wonder if we might have the honor of visiting your master? I would like to thank him in person for taking care of Spirit Lord Lu." Lu Lingjun also looked toward Sushi. In the past few days, Sushi had shown her around, enriching her understanding of many immortal cultivation concepts. Whenever she wanted something, Sushi had purchased it before she even asked, and despite some reservations about the motives of the Dingtian Peak Master, she still held a good impression of Sushi. Sushi shook her head and said, "My master hasn't mentioned wanting to meet you, nor has he said he is keeping Ms. Lu. After the Peak Conference, you may return without any burden." This statement caused the Holy Mother of the Western Spirit and Lu Lingjun to exchange puzzled glances. Just then, a cultivator landed in the yard. The elder from the Great Cold Demon sect offended the Dingtian Peak Master, and perished just after leaving Mortal World Peak. The person spoke excitedly, capturing everyone's attention. Upon hearing it concerned the Dingtian Peak Master, the trio showed curious expressions. The person began to recount the events at the Cloud Banquet, a scenario that was spreading quickly among all peaks of the Mortal World Peak. Mo Hen had once been an elder of the Great Cold Demon sect, which was nearly dissolved, so Mortal World Peak had no hesitation in making his demise known to demonstrate its strength. From Mo Hen forcing the Dingtian Peak Master to relinquish his position to the Dingtian Peak Master, showing stronger cultivation than Mo Hen, and publicly slapping him, forcing Mo Hen to leave disgracefully. The whole process fired up everyone who heard it. Mo Hen had just flown out of Mortal World Peak when he fell, making the Dingtian Peak Master seem even more formidable in the eyes of the listeners. The news spread within Dingtian Peak, motivating all disciples and clearing the gloom of their low ranking. After understanding this, Lu Lingjun felt even more uneasy. Such a strong-willed Dingtian Peak Master. To have such a person assisting her was a mixed blessing. Due to the conflict between the Dingtian Peak Master and Mo Hen, this Wanli Peak Conference became much more discussive. As Mo Hen's identity and deeds were unearthed, all guests could feel the strength of Mortal World Peak. After the Cloud Banquet ended, Guan returned to the Supreme Sect. He had also heard the noise from Mortal World Peak. How could news spread so fast? In reality, it was Mortal World Peak deliberately promoting it, thankfully without mentioning Meng Lang's name, showing him respect. Guan returned to the Third Medicine Valley, and happened to meet an Xian, and they chatted for a bit. Master-disciple discussed ordinary matters in the valley, and Guan found talking about life's minor details more interesting than discussing major worldly affairs. Those carefree primordial immortals always talked of grand principles, and the world's populace, floating aloft. In the divine exotic realm under the blood-red firmament, Zhang Buku stood by the seashore practicing his divine skills. Behind him, the divine exotic realm master sat before the divine exotic life tablet, looking up at the heavens, lost in thought with a vacant gaze. Zhang Buku finished his maneuver and turned to face his master, asking, "Master, the great calamity has ended, and you have reached agreements with various sects across the sea. Why do you still look so troubled?" Thinking about how sword_exempt_title_converted the Great Cold Demon sect stirred his blood. Since he began walking the path of immortal cultivation, he had often heard of the deeds of Sword Venerable Fudao. He never imagined that wherever he went, Sword Venerable Fudao would still be revered by all as a supreme great power. Divine Exotic Realm Master slowly retracted his gaze and said, "Just like Master, the Great Cold Demon sect is but a pawn. This matter cannot end so quickly. The commotion is too large, and the Holy Court will surely investigate. When the storm settles, more trouble will come." Zhang Buku disagreed and said, "If there were an existence behind the Great Cold Demon sect capable of contending with Sword Venerable Fudao, wouldn't they have acted long ago? Perhaps they are investigating Sword Venerable Fudao's identity and cultivation level. Master, don't worry. Wouldn't it be better for you to focus on cultivating and strive to break free from destiny on your own? Zhang Buku advised. Since his father's death, he had faced continuous tribulations and developed a firm heart. He knew worrying about the future was futile, and seizing the moment to cultivate diligently was key. The divine exotic realm master shook his head, smiling. Master is not like you. I cannot strengthen through cultivation. The more divine exotic resentful ghosts there are, the stronger master becomes. Zhang Buku frowned upon hearing this and asked, now that the world is at peace, won't you be unable to expand the number of divine exotic resentful ghosts? The divine exotic realm master nodded, then looked up again and said, it just means I can't grow stronger in this realm. My disciple, would you like to venture to other great heaven and earths? Where? A very dark realm. The words of the divine exotic realm master puzzled Zhang Buku. What did very dark mean? Was there a place darker than the divine exotic realm? Time flew by, and 7 years passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, Lu Lingjun returned. She saw Guan playing Go with someone and couldn't help but shake her head and laugh. Was Go really that engaging? Her gaze fell on Shinxinzi. Why had this prominent figure from the Bittersea Buddha sect stayed here all this time? She couldn't figure out what charm the Third Medicine Valley held to attract such a great cultivator. She communicated with Guan telepathically. Upon hearing her, he immediately asked Yang Jian, who was standing beside him, to help with the game. Seeing Yang Jian prepare to play, Lu Xianyi from the Holy Court approached. Over the years, he always tried to flatter Yang Jian, a demeanor that led Guan to speculate, but Guan had kept his thoughts to himself, pretending not to know. Guan squeezed through the crowd to greet Lu Lingjun. Let's talk in your room, Lu Lingjun nodded. Guan had no objections, and the two made small talk as they walked toward the building. Once inside, Lu Lingjun casually sat down, scanning the surroundings. When her eyes landed on certain books on the shelf, she couldn't help but grimace. Some things never change. Guan brewed tea for her as she began recounting her experiences over the years. I attended the Wanli Peak meeting at Mortal World Peak. It was an eye-opener. Are you aware of Mortal World Peak? Lu Lingjun asked. Guan nodded and replied, I've heard of it. Shinxinzi was there too, but I don't understand much about it. Those great cultivators said I'm not qualified to know. Lu Lingjun smiled and said, Indeed, you're not qualified. But I was fortunate to attend, and I can tell you about it. Want to hear? Guan, carrying the hot tea, placed the cup in front of her and said, Of course I want to hear. Go on. Let's see if you will try to impress me. Lu Lingjun began from where she first learned about the Wanli Peak meeting, and Guan sat down to listen attentively. She didn't hide the Dingtian Peak master's protectiveness toward her. Even her language seemed to steer, seemingly eager to see Guan's reaction. Guan kept a normal expression, silently criticizing in his mind. Are all women like this? Previously, Jiang Qiong also used sword Venerable Fudao to pressure him. After some time, Lu Lingjun remarked reflectively, the strength of the Dingtian Peak master is unimaginable. The elder from the Great Cold Demon sect was killed just like that. I wonder when I could reach such a realm. Guan joked, practice cultivation for 180,000 years. Lu Lingjun glared at him and retorted, Easy for you to say? 1,000,000 years might not be enough. You have no idea about the vastness of the Immortal Path realm. Chapter 312. The shock of Hu Xiaojian appreciation flickered in Guan's eyes. He hadn't expected Lu Lingjun to have such a keen self-awareness. Lu Lingjun, seeing Guan's expression, felt rather helpless. Was this guy always so calm? She glared at Guan and said unenthusiastically, Don't you long for it after hearing all that? Guan replied, Of course I yearn for it, but over the years I've heard too many tales of immortals. At best, I take them as entertainment. Could a great man like myself even dream of such things? Lu Lingjun felt his words were somewhat odd, but she was too lazy to argue and continued to talk about her observations from Mortal World Peak. Although Guan had been there at the time, hearing it from Lu Lingjun's perspective offered a different view of the scene. The two chatted for over an ancient hour, and Lu Lingjun expressed her desire to stay temporarily in the third medicine valley, to which Guan agreed. Guan stretched in a languid manner as he looked out the window. Tomorrow he could go to Dingtian Peak to pick medicinal herbs. He had ordered Zhu Xinglan to establish a medicine garden, and the first batch of medicinal herbs was already ripe. Regarding the medicine garden on Dingtian Peak, Guan had no intention of prohibiting other disciples from picking the herbs, so as not to arouse suspicion. After all, Mortal World Peak was now a first-class sect with close ties to the Holy Court, and he had to be careful. And after all, Dingtian Peak was vast. Even with disciples helping, he could collect many herbs himself. Thinking of this, a look of anticipation appeared in Gu An's eyes. The following afternoon, on Dingtian Peak, Guan walked up the mountain path to the summit, followed by Zhu Xinglan, who displayed great respect as the peak's foremost disciple. He now knew that Guan was a great power who surpassed the carefree primordial immortal. Such a major figure was critical to cling to, and so he was eager to assist in any way possible. "I need a wandering immortal disciple to take charge of an island for me," Guan said casually. "Ask around for me. I won't treat him unfairly." Today had brought him over 300,000 years of lifespan, a decent haul. Zhu Xinglan immediately responded, "Master, if you wish to leave today, I will arrange it now." "Go ahead." With Gu An's consent, Zhu Xinglan vanished on the spot. Guan walked to the courtyard and sat on a bench, looking up. Ever since his last breakthrough, cosmic wars had erupted from time to time outside, with increasing numbers of heaven and earth flying immortals coming and going. Guan also caught sight of the visage of a heavenly demon. The heavenly demons appeared no different from living beings, and included many of the human race. The most distinct feature of the heavenly demons was their demonic qi, which was different from that of the demon cultivators and demons within the great heavenly spirit land. It was more sinister and instinctively repelling. At the periphery of the silent destruction domain, two heaven and earth flying immortals were engaged in combat, fighting over a treasure. Carefree primordial immortals were observing in the shadows. Half an incense stick of time later, Zhu Xinglan returned, bringing someone with him. Sun Hanfeng, Wandering Immortal Realm, 4th layer 89034/14000/2800000. Guan sized up Sun Hanfeng, who wore a black robe with a slightly sinister face, unkempt hair, and an aura that gave off an impression of great scheming. Feeling Gu An's gaze, Sun Hanfeng lowered his head, not daring to make eye contact. He was nervous because had heard how powerful and domineering this new master was, but he didn't want to miss such an opportunity. Disciple Sun Hanfeng greets master. Sun Hanfeng said respectfully with a bow. Zhu Xinglan followed with an introduction of his background. Sun Hanfeng had been born on Mortal World Peak, and had a very good relationship with Zhu Xinglan. "Let's be off then." Guan stood up and, with a sweep of his sleeve, whisked Sun Hanfeng away. Zhu Xinglan was momentarily stunned, admiring how impressive the master's divine skills were. Many privately discussed just how powerful the master of Dingtian Peak really was. Zhu Xinglan received an important piece of information. Sect leader Yongnian Daojun believed that the master of Dingtian Peak possessed a higher cultivation level than he did. Such an assessment left him with boundless imagination. Elsewhere, Guan arrived at Immortal Seeking Island with Sun Hanfeng in tow. As they alighted, Sun Hanfeng stumbled, nearly falling, but Guan caught his arm in time. "Are you all right?" Guan asked. Sun Hanfeng, his face flushed with embarrassment, quickly replied, "I'm fine, master. Sorry for the laugh." Guan nodded and began walking towards the buildings ahead, with Sun Hanfeng hastily following. Guan started to brief him on Immortal Seeking Island. After understanding the strength of the island, Sun Hanfeng breathed a sigh of relief. A place where a wandering immortal alone could be a deterrent? What pressure could there possibly be? "You and the island both share the Sun surname. That's quite a coincidence," Guan joked, with Sun Hanfeng offering only an embarrassed smile, and not the least bit of dissatisfaction. Soon, Hu Xiaojian and several elders of the Sea Protection Mansion were introduced, and Guan had Sun Hanfeng introduce himself. "From Mortal World Peak, I am Sun Hanfeng. I look forward to working with all of you and hope for your fullest support." Sun Hanfeng said, and then exhibited the aura of a wandering immortal, which caused everyone in the hall to breathe rapidly. Having spent years doubting whether Gu An's claims were true, they were all shocked to finally witness a wandering immortal. Hu Xiaojian was especially excited, looking at Guan with eyes full of admiration. That's settled then. From now on, Sun Hanfeng is in charge of Immortal Seeking Island. You all talk. With those words, Guan left. Everyone turned their attention to Sun Hanfeng, all quite nervous since he didn't seem easy to approach. After Guan left, Sun Hanfeng sat down with an assertive posture, no longer as restrained as before. May I ask, Elder, does the island master also hail from Mortal World Peak? One of the loose immortals asked cautiously. The reputation of Mortal World Peak was significant, and even if they were unfamiliar with it, they had heard of it. Naturally, Sun Hanfeng said. Everyone smiled, now believing Sun Hanfeng had a favorable relationship with the island master. Or at least that he was not an outsider. The island master is my master. You can rest assured. What's most important is that we all work together to run Immortal Seeking Island well. We cannot disappoint him. Moreover, I can tell you his cultivation level is exceedingly high, stronger than anything you have heard of. Serving him is the greatest fortune of your lives. Sun Hanfeng's words widened everyone's eyes. Hu Xiaojian was bewildered. The elder was of such a grand origin? Was he not a loose immortal? Wait, loose immortal was what he had claimed himself. Hu Xiaojian felt overwhelmed by immense joy, his mind buzzing, failing to pay attention to the ensuing discussions from the elders. Sun Hanfeng also noticed his distraction but did not mind, as Guan had instructed to take good care of the lad. Seasons changed and another year passed. After the new spring, Guan visited the branch of the Supreme Sect. It was his first time at the branch, which he reached through the teleportation array in the main city of Sect. The Supreme Sect grew stronger every year, and its ties with the branch became tighter. Guan observed the branch's city, feeling the spiritual energy there, which was almost on par with the main city of Sect. No wonder so many disciples wished to come here. Not only was the spiritual energy abundant here, but disciples could also go out to train at any time, hunting demons and searching for heavenly and earthly treasures. The Taizong dynasty had yet to claim the whole continent, and the same was true for the immortal cultivation sects, as they had not yet traversed every mountain and river on the continent. Guan didn't rush to find Yilan, and began to wander around. As he wandered, he came across an acquaintance, a friend he had made in the outer gate city, with whom he exchanged pleasantries for quite some time. Moving on to the next street, he encountered a disciple from the Third Medicine Valley, who had achieved foundation establishment. This was the sediment of a 227-year life. Guan enjoyed chatting with old friends, feeling no distance had grown between them. In the next ancient hour, he encountered two more old acquaintances, indicating that the branch had become the preferred destination for many average disciples, all in search of opportunities in the demon land. Guan was briefly contemplative, but did not interfere with others' lives, unless he cared deeply for them. Like his junior sister Yilan. By the time Guan arrived at Yilan's residence, she appeared out of nowhere with a joyful cry. "Big brother, what brings you here?" As she spoke, she rushed over to hug Guan in public. "You must behave yourself." Guan quickly raised his hand and protested. Yilan reluctantly stopped, then pulled him toward the residence, all the while giving him a rundown of the current state of the branch. Inside the residence were numerous female disciples looking after the estate, and as they saw Yilan with Guan, curious eyes followed. After they walked away, Guan could hear the maids start to gossip about them. Eventually, Yilan led Guan into her room, then closed the door. As the two sat down to chat, Yilan finished sharing her experiences, and began to inquire about how Guan had spent his years. Guan recounted his life, and although it was mundane, Yilan's face remained lit with a smile. Who would have thought, they thought back then, that 200 years later, they would be able to sit together once more. Gradually, Yilan's mind wandered as she fell into a strange state. She experienced this because Guan was guiding her toward enlightenment. Gu An's divine thought covered the room, helping Yilan perceive the heaven and earth rules, a method beyond the imagination of mortal spirits. Even facing Guan herself, Yilan didn't notice anything amiss. It was as though Yilan had entered a dream state, her eyes distant and unfocused. Guan stood up, carried her to the bed, and guided her into meditation. Then he retreated to the table, sitting down to watch her practice. And so he watched Yilan meditate, his heart full of expectation. If he could help Yilan extend her maximum lifespan, he would arrange for her to train at mortal world peak. If not, sending Yilan with her few centuries of life to mortal world peak would only add to her troubles. Once one's horizons expand, it's easy to develop more expectations, leading to anxiety and pressure. Even divine skills from a true immortal cannot grant eternal life. There seems to be a force in the shadows resisting life's expansion. What that could be, Guan was also curious to know. Time flew swiftly by. Guan suddenly felt a bit bored and whimsically considered another option. Why not open another round of reincarnation evolution? This time he would not select the dark great heaven and earth. He was curious to see how long he could survive. Perhaps if he lived for thousands or tens of thousands of years and mastered formidable divine skills, it might increase his chances of surviving the next tribulation crossing. Moreover, the memories passed down from reincarnation evolution could benefit his Taoist heart cultivation. Guan felt reaching a certain level might require reincarnation cultivation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have unlocked this feature. Let's give it a shot then. Just one shot, no greediness. After all, it would cost 10 million years of lifespan, and even if he wanted to play more, it was not possible. Guan looked at Yilan, thinking to himself, "Little sister, please." Chapter 313, Battle Court, Emperor of Heavenly Dragon. You spent 10 million years of lifespan to initiate a reincarnation evolution. Beginning to connect with the Tao rules. Searching for a reincarnation destination. You have the following destinations to choose from. Select 1. 1. Dahong Realm. 2. Dark Great Heaven and Earth. 3. Divine Origin Great Heaven and Earth. There's a Dark Great Heaven and Earth again? Guan looked at the prompt before his eyes, immediately feeling aggravated. Black Profound Emperor. You wait for me. Our blood feud from 2 lifetimes cannot be resolved. Guan hummed in his heart, and then chose Divine Origin Great Heaven and Earth. He always felt that Great Heaven and Earth seemed more advanced, something like a realm, similar to where Lu Lingjun and Blood Prison Great Saint came from, the lower realm. As Guan was thinking, prompts began to appear in front of him. You've chosen to reincarnate into the Divine Origin Great Heaven and Earth. Due to the strength of the Tao rules in this realm, you temporarily can't initiate the life-stealing ability, nor can you activate phased features. Reincarnation evolution begins. In the first year, you were born into the dragon family of the divine continent, and your parents bestowed upon you the name Longzhan. At the age of 3, you awakened the true bloodline of the dragon family, and, with the help of your clan, you tempered the dragon blood true body. At the age of 8, your family arranged for an immortal master for you, and you officially stepped onto the path of immortal cultivation. At the age of 9, your father took you to court to meet the Emperor of Divine Dynasty, who wished to betroth the 7th princess to you. Your father thought to let you decide. Do you accept? The prompt stopped there. Guan had just been wondering how he had turned into a dragon. He preferred being a human. The appearance of Divine Dynasty signified that dragon was only a surname. Guan hesitated for a moment, and decided to accept, wanting to tread carefully in this life. You accepted the arrangement of the Emperor of Divine Dynasty, and you shall marry the 7th princess, Han Jiaoer, when you turn 16. The Emperor of Divine Dynasty was overjoyed, generously rewarding you and making a decree to announce this to the world. At the age of 13, while accompanied by your clan for training outside, you tore apart a 4th Order Demon King with your bare hands, shocking your clan. At the age of 16, you and Han Jiaoer got married in a ceremony, officially becoming the prince consort of the Divine Dynasty. The Emperor of Divine Dynasty conferred upon you the title of Mighty Holy Duke, granting you the Divine Dynasty's chief fortune. You became famous throughout the world, entering the ranks of the top-tier talents. At the age of 18, you decided to venture into the world to grow stronger. You left with Han Jiao's reluctant farewell. And in the same year, she gave birth to your son, named Long Xian. At the age of 20, you reached the edge of the divine continent and saw an evil dragon ravaging the city. You stepped in, subdued it, and unexpectedly discovered you could absorb dragon blood, making your chi blood even stronger. At the age of 21, you encountered an old Taoist who wanted to read your fate. Do you accept? It stopped again, suggesting the old Taoist was no ordinary person. Guan hesitated for a moment and chose to accept. You agreed to let the old Taoist read your fate. He pinched your muscles and bones and began to calculate. He was soon shocked, proclaiming you possess an innate divine emperor fate, destined to dominate all creatures of heaven and earth, becoming the lord of great heaven and earth. Immediately afterward, the old Taoist exploded into a burst of blood, covering you. At 25, you accidentally entered the grotto heaven of an ancient great cultivator and learned the ancient strange skill, divine desolation technique. Gu An's lips twitched when he saw the part about the old Taoist's explosive demise. After that, he picked the more cautious options whenever possible. Year after year passed. Guan was on tenterhooks, fearing an early death. When he made it past 200 years, he smiled, finally setting a new record. However, without the life-stealing ability, Long Zhan's growth was surely not as fast as Chu Lu, Xiao Xingtian, and without a displayed realm in the prompts. Take it slow. Guan then became even more earnest, determined to strive to survive this life. As time ticked by, Yilan was meditating on the bed while Guan sat at the desk, the room engulfed in silence. Birdsong occasionally rang out from outside the window, adding a serene atmosphere of passing years. After an ancient hour, Guan let out a sigh, his expression grave, mired in struggle. At the age of 187,632, you met with the dragon family ancestor, who said he could fully awaken your bloodline, allowing it to fuse with your chi fortune and create an unprecedented physique. Do you accept his help? Guan had achieved the status of war god of the divine continent, and was now venturing through the cosmos when he encountered the ancestor. He always felt the ancestor was up to no good. He did not want to die after coming this far. If the ancestor was benevolent, he wouldn't make things difficult for a descendant who refused him. If malevolent, not trusting him might lead to disaster, but trusting him could lead to plummeting into the abyss. Do not accept. You refused the help of the dragon family ancestor. The ancestor was enraged and attacked you, intending to suppress you. After a great battle, you escaped with severe injuries. At the age of 187,633, you met with Fairy Ziyuan, who fortunately saved you. Your injuries were healed thanks to her. Next came adventure. Fairy Ziyuan began to follow him on adventures, making him less lonely. As for his wife Han Jiao, he had gone to bid her farewell when he was 100,000 years old. They had been parted by yin and yang. It was because of this that he left his descendants behind and ventured alone into the cosmos. Guan became more relaxed in his subsequent choices, as Long Zhan grew stronger and always managed to escape from death. Half an ancient hour later, at the age of 350,896, you unified a small universe, established the battle court, and married Fairy Ziyuan. You self-proclaimed as the Emperor of Heavenly Dragon and crowned Fairy Ziyuan as the Heavenly Empress. Quite impressive. Guan suddenly felt a sense of achievement, as if unlocking an epic achievement in a game. He could persevere further. Guan rubbed his hands together and continued to read on. One 10,000-year span followed another. After tens of thousands of years, at the age of 360,000, you broke through your own shackles, achieving the Tao Void mysterious immortal realm, shocking the cosmos. You regained your life grid. Do you activate the life-stealing ability? Here it comes. It's here. Guan chose to seize without hesitation. You activated the life-stealing ability. You sacrificed a universe of living beings, resulting in a massive surge in lifespan. Sacrificed? Gu An's face turned pale. How could he be so reckless? At the age of 360,001, just as you transcended the 9 heavens of a mortal path, and became one with the immortals and gods. A terrifying hand reached across the river of time and snuffed you out. You were executed by the Annihilation God Emperor. Reincarnation ends. What the hell? It ended so abruptly? After he activated the life-stealing ability, Guan hadn't even made a choice. Guan immediately vanished from the room and appeared on an island overseas, initiating the lifespan barrier. He then sat down and looked at the last few prompts, grinding his teeth. Good. Very good. Annihilation God Emperor. Another name was added to Guan's list of grievances. Following that, a huge influx of memories flooded into his mind. It was the entire life of the Emperor of Heavenly Dragon, Long Zhan. It was only after truly receiving the memories that Guan realized how extraordinary Long Zhan's talent was, being unique from birth, inspiring great expectations from his family. The love between him and Han Jiao also left Guan deeply moved. Once Long Zhan ventured into the cosmos, his life became even more extraordinary, his story deeply touching. Within the memories, Guan also saw Fairy Ziyuan, incomparably beautiful and with a grace none in the world could match. Chapter 314. Heavenly Dragon and the Ji family. As Guan continued to assimilate Long Zhan's memories, his hostility towards the Annihilation God Emperor also began to weaken. This Long Zhan is too arrogant. Before his wife Han Jiao's death, he still exercised some restraint in his actions, but since he went to outer heaven, he completely unleashed himself and acted recklessly. The battle court he established was also tyrannical, rewarding those who followed him and annihilating those who opposed. The peace of heaven and earth sacrificed by Long Zhan was completely innocent and involved, and the creatures of that realm didn't even have time to react before they died. The whole world turned to dust in an instant. Before, Guan felt that Xiao Xingtian was already arrogant enough, but compared to Long Zhan, he was nothing. If Guan had been in the great heavenly spirit land, and also possessed the ability to slay Long Zhan, he would definitely have made a move. After Guan finished integrating the memories, it was as if he had lived through Long Zhan's life himself, becoming the Emperor of Heavenly Dragon. Yet when he looked back, he was filled with regret and remorse. Before Long Zhan transcended the 9 heavens of immortal path, Fairy Ziyuan had advised him not to pursue enlightenment at the expense of harming other beings. Long Zhan didn't listen, and the two even broke ties over this. After the inheritance of memories ended, Guan was still immersed in them. He was Guan but also Long Zhan. This feeling left Guan with an indescribable sense. Perhaps this is what it felt like to remember a past life in one's current life. Clearly the same person, but with different personalities. After inheriting the memories of Long Zhan's life, Guan also gained a lot, including insights into the Taoist heart and the ability to inherit Long Zhan's most powerful divine skills. Heavenly Dragon Reincarnation Dharma Aspect. This divine skill could condense the ultimate Dharma aspect of one's Taoist sorcery, and could even condense the Dharma aspect of a past life to fight alongside oneself. After creating this divine skill, Long Zhan had intended to cultivate through reincarnation evolution to create Dharma aspects for tens of thousands of generations, but an accident unlocked the life-stealing ability, and he no longer researched this divine skill, instead continually using lifespan evolution to enhance his divine skill. Guan slowly opened his eyes and then disappeared inside the island retreat, returning to Yilan's estate. At this moment, Yilan was still in a state of path enlightenment. Guan sat down and continued to reflect on Long Zhan's life. The Long Zhan who had transcended the 9 heavens of immortal path was truly powerful. The feeling of controlling life and casually manipulating rules fascinated Guan even now. At the same time, he was also filled with dread at the power of the Annihilation God Emperor. He had truly been crushed to death by the Annihilation God Emperor with a single hand. He hadn't even seen the true form of the Annihilation God Emperor. It was a means that transcended time and space, and was superior to the cosmic rules. After understanding Long Zhan's life, Guan no longer harbored intense hostility towards the Annihilation God Emperor. Unlike Chu Lu and Xiao Xingtian, Long Zhan had brought death upon himself. Guan felt somewhat confused. If reincarnation evolution could be realized, he might also create a peerless evil being. Fundamentally, he did not want to, but he couldn't control the personality in the cycle of reincarnation. Yet reincarnation evolution had many benefits, allowing him to remember countless spells and divine skills, adding to his combat experience, and even enhancing his understanding of reincarnation, making it very difficult for him to give up. After much thought, Guan felt he was trapping himself in his own web of thoughts. Why overthink so much? The path to becoming stronger couldn't possibly be achieved without harming the innocent. Many moral judgments are based on perspective, just like in war. Are not the civilians of the enemy's country innocent? At most, the next time he encounters a situation like Long Zhan's, he could choose not to activate the life-stealing ability and rely on his own efforts to cultivate. In fact, even without the life-stealing ability, Long Zhan's talent was very strong. Guan began to review the cultivation technique of the Heavenly Dragon Reincarnation Dharma aspect. He felt this Dharma aspect seemed familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. He soon remembered. The Ji family's Heavenly Dragon Demon Suppressing form had some similarities. He planned to ask Ji Xiaoyu about it later. Ji Xiaoyu had already inherited divine skills when she returned to the Ji family, and might be able to perform the Heavenly Dragon Demon Suppressing form. The sun set and the moon rose. A night passed. Yilan gradually woke up, and felt as if she had had a dream, one she couldn't remember clearly after waking up. When she opened her eyes, she felt the entire world had changed. Her gaze fell on the table, and she saw Guan reading a book. Guan turned his head to look at her and smiled, asking, "Awake?" Yilan, Divinity Transformation Realm Level 5222/600/800. Her lifespan limit had increased by 200 years. Guan let out a sigh of relief, his face showing a smile. As long as there were results. But the effect was somewhat weak. He was, after all, a divine thought true immortal. Guan carefully examined Yilan and noticed a subtle breath dissipating from her body, like the heaven and earth rules, but even more difficult to detect. "How did I fall asleep?" Yilan asked, puzzled. Guan rolled his eyes and said, "You're asking me? It's not like I drugged you, is it?" "I'm not even blaming you. I came all this way, and while we were talking, you fell asleep, leaving me hanging." Yilan showed an embarrassed expression and couldn't help asking, "Then why didn't you wake me up? You were cultivating even in your sleep. It was clearly not ordinary sleep, so how could I dare to interrupt you?" Guan replied, standing up. "I'm leaving. I'll come to see you again next time." "Sister, why not stay a couple more days?" "No can do. Medicine Valley can't do without me." "Really? How come I heard you're always hands-off as a manager?" "How could that be?" The two bickered for a while, but in the end, Guan firmly decided to leave. Yilan walked him to the estate's front door. Guan suddenly stopped in his tracks, turned to look at her, and asked, "In your heart, which is more important, good and evil or affection?" He asked this because he was reminded of the scene where Long Zhan and Fairy Ziyuan broke ties. Although Long Zhan brought it upon himself, the end result of his loneliness still left him sighing. Long Zhan might have been overbearing, but towards the people by his side, he was quite good. He just didn't tolerate any dissent from them. Yilan was taken aback for a moment, then smiled gracefully and said, "If you were evil, I myself would not be evil, but I would always follow you, as long as you don't abandon me." Guan showed a smile and said, "Don't overthink it. I was just thinking about the plot in a book. I don't have the courage to do evil." With that, he waved his hand and walked away. Yilan watched his retreating figure, thoughtful. As summer approached, the weather cooled. In the woods, Guan watched Ji Xiaoyu step onto the clearing with anticipation in his eyes. Ji Xiaoyu's forehead was etched with a red Dao pattern that burst into light. Her whole aura suddenly changed. She raised her right hand, and the spiritual power inside her activated in a sophisticated manner, quickly coalescing behind her into a golden wheel that resembled a round glowing door with intricate and profound patterns. As the golden wheel opened, golden dragons surged out from the intense light. Her heavenly dragon demon suppressing form differed from her past life, but Guan saw through it at a glance. The essence of the heavenly dragon demon suppressing form shared the same origin as the heavenly dragon reincarnation dharma aspect, but was weaker and far less sophisticated than the latter. This discovery made Guan's heart tremble. The heavenly dragon reincarnation Dharma aspect was created by Longzhan himself. Could the Ji family be related to Longzhan? In Longzhan's memories, he only passed the heavenly dragon reincarnation Dharma aspect onto his son Long Xian, which implies that Long Xian passed it down. From the life experiences of Chu Lu and Xiao Xingtian, their timelines might differ from Guan's. Could it be that reincarnation evolution might project into the past? Ji Xiaoyu dismissed the heavenly dragon demon suppressing form, then approached Guan and asked, "How was it?" Although she wasn't sure why Guan wanted to see the heavenly dragon demon suppressing form, it was renowned throughout the world, and showing it to outsiders did not violate clan rules. Truly formidable, it fills me with awe. The person who created this divine skill must truly be a godly being. Does the Ji family have a record of who created it? Guan exclaimed. Ji Xiaoyu thought for a moment and said, "This divine skill has an ancient origin, created by an ancestor. Who exactly created it, I am unsure, but if you care, I can look into it when I return." Guan nodded. "I'm indeed curious. I want to write a book inspired by the Ji family's history." Upon hearing this, Ji Xiaoyu smiled and said, "The vice sect leader is looking forward to you writing about the Ji family." The two continued their conversation, with Ji Xiaoyu planning to introduce other divine skills, but Guan showed no interest, so she gave up. Both of them headed towards Medicine Valley. The heavenly dragon demon suppressing form was created by the reincarnation path emperor, or perhaps, I have seen her perform it. A voice came from the forest ahead, and stealing the 5 elements appeared. Ji Xiaoyu frowned, her expression full of displeasure. Guan had already noticed stealing the 5 elements eavesdropping, and he too was speculating whether it was related to the reincarnation path emperor, so he didn't mind stealing the 5 elements' presence. Currently, only the reincarnation path emperor in the Ji family could travel to outer heaven. Stealing the 5 elements, seeing the look in Ji Xiaoyu's eyes, laughed and said, "She once said that at the other end of the universe, there exists a more vast expanse of heaven and earth that I can't even fathom." After hearing this, Guan suddenly suspected that the dragon race or the battle court might still exist. Of course, it was just a guess. Although he integrated Longzhan's memories and became Longzhan, he had no intention of seeking out the dragon race or the battle court. Staying honestly in the great heavenly spirit land was the righteous path. Even the strong could be crushed by others. "Why do you always eavesdrop on our conversation?" Ji Xiaoyu said discontentedly, the Tao patterns on her forehead emitting strange radiance once again. Stealing the 5 elements raised his hand. "I mean no harm. Am I not helping you clear up your doubts? If you could transform into the reincarnation path emperor, I would only be pleased." With that, he vanished on the spot. Guan consoled, "Don't worry about him. Watch how we'll crush him on the chessboard in the future." Ji Xiaoyu retracted her Tao patterns and nodded slightly. For Guan, this was just a minor interlude. Understanding was enough. He didn't need to investigate thoroughly. Longzhan's karma was too significant. He didn't want to get involved. But this incident stirred his imagination. If reincarnation evolution projected into the past, how strong would the Black Profound Emperor be now? What about that Annihilation God Emperor in Great Heavenly Spirit Land? Would they also be in his field of view? Guan felt he needed to be even more cautious in the future, and must not let others know he could steal lifespan. A flock of birds flew out from the forest, heading toward the distance, their figures obscured by the sunlight. 5 years quickly passed. This year, news spread throughout the world, causing a sensation. The establishment of the Broken Sea Domain, created by the Holy Court, covering the region that the Great Cold Demon sect previously sought to slaughter in the mortal world. With the sea-breaking rift at the center, the news spread rapidly, penetrating the continent, with the Emperor Li Xiandao following with an edict to the world, declaring the continent be renamed Taitsong Continent. Chapter 315. Destined Fate Broken Sea Domain. Inside Enzin's house, Guan sat at the table, lost in thought. Why hadn't they set up the domain before? If it was for the sake of guarding against the Great Cold Demon sect, it was hardly necessary. After all, the Great Cold Demon sect was no different from being disbanded. Guan felt that the other party had come specifically for him, especially since the Great Cold Demon sect had a holy king standing behind them. He could see a large number of cultivators building a floating island in the sky at the edge of the sea-breaking rift. He watched for a while before withdrawing his gaze and looking back at an Exian. At the moment, an Exian was immersed in path enlightenment, and with Guan's help, she had also entered that state and had been there for several ancient hours. Guan kept checking Enzin's lifespan limit. Finally, Enzin's lifespan limit began to grow, albeit weakly, but it was indeed increasing. Guan stared intently at an Exian, probing everything within her body. Soon he caught a glimpse of that mysterious force more complicated than causality, just like the situation with Yilan before. As the lifespan limit increased, this mysterious force began to separate from her body. It seemed likely that all beings were bound by this force, and increasing the lifespan limit would weaken it. Could this be fate? Guan fell into contemplation. Even divine monarchs with powerful divine thoughts could not see through the force that manipulated the lives of all beings. Regardless, having started to be able to catch it was a good beginning. Afterward, Guan got up and left. After all, this was the third Medicine Valley, and it wasn't appropriate for a man and a woman to be alone in the same room, especially with their mentor-disciple relationship. Moreover, in Medicine Valley with him around, no one could disturb Enzin's path enlightenment. The night passed. The next morning, an Exian walked out of her house and followed the disciples in their exercises. She felt somewhat dazed looking around her. She could feel that the world had changed. From afar, Guan saw her lifespan limit had grown to 300 years. She hadn't yet released her cultivation level suppression, and the primordial reincarnation skill could still increase her lifespan limit. Guan didn't greet an Exian, pretending to know nothing about it. In the following days, the establishment of the Broken Sea domain and the renaming of the continent became hot topics among all. As summer approached, Guan was teaching Yang Jian cultivation in the woods, aware of Lu Xianyi watching in secret, but unconcerned. As long as Lu Xianyi didn't become hostile to him. Lu Xianyi, sitting above the clouds, looked down thoughtfully. This person's cultivation isn't very impressive, but he's very talented at teaching disciples. Could it be that he really encountered an immortal in a dream? Lu Xianyi wondered curiously. He had joined the Supreme Sect, and even entered the Hall of Elders, aware of Guan's identity as an author. Beyond that, he could only confirm Guan was indeed only over 200 years old, as many could attest, so he didn't feel wary of Guan. Even if Guan was the reincarnation of a great power, he posed no threat to a divinity of the 9 layers of the heaven and earth flying immortal realm. Because of this, Lu Xianyi's curiosity about Guan was even greater than his expectations for Yang Jian. That's enough for today, Guan said. Hearing this, Yang Jian stopped his movements and saluted Guan with a fist. Today, Guan imparted a great deal of combat experience. With memories of Longzhan's battles, Guan's combat experience had surpassed most in the world. A single afternoon had benefited Yang Jian immensely. On the way back to the valley, Yang Jian was very excited. He had not expected his master's close combat abilities to be so extraordinary. A genius has returned today. I'll take you to see him later. Guan mentioned casually, noting Lu Xianyi, seeing their training conclude, left, not to leave the Supreme Sect, but to play chess. A genius? Who? That Wu Ju, Uncle Master? Yang Jian asked curiously. Wu Ju had visited Guan years before, and Yang Jian had only seen him from afar, learning afterward of Wu Ju's famed reputation. Not him. You'll know later, Guan said mysteriously, piquing Yang Jian's curiosity further. When the master and disciple returned to Medicine Valley, they heard other disciples discussing. And how is here? Really? True, an Exian, our sister apprentice, is actually an house sister. They both have the same last name. Could they be blood siblings? No, they're just from the same village and once had the same master, who later renamed them. My goodness. And how is so handsome, almost like an immortal? Haha, always the romantic, aren't you? The Supreme Sect has seen so many geniuses over the years. Yet those great figures still think, and how is the greatest genius the Supreme Sect has ever had? Yang Jian's expression changed slightly, his fists clenched unconsciously. It was Hao. He glanced at Guan covertly, noticing no reaction, and so he suppressed the excitement in his heart. His current cultivation had already reached the 9th layer of the divinity transformation realm. A result of focusing on his physical cultivation. He wanted to be acknowledged as the #1 genius too. He had also suspected that Hao was that mysterious senior disciple. Today he hoped to unravel the mystery. Guan led him to Zin's courtyard. Guan noticed stealing the 5 elements and Lu Xianyi observing Hao with their divine senses. Hao, with the vast gulf in their realms, was unaware. The 9-fingered divine lord didn't come today, and Shen Xinzi was immersed in studying the journey to the west under a tree, much like Zhuo Yijian in his absorption. Guan looked at the imposing Hao and was very pleased. The current Hao had already reached the 8th layer of the unification realm, still cultivating at an impressive speed. Yang Jian was a major realm behind him, not yet comparable, but once they entered the immortal path realm, the gap would be trivial. When master and disciple arrived outside Zin's courtyard, she turned around, smiling, and then pulled Hao out of the house. Hao stood tall, head crowned with an imposing golden dragon crown, dressed in a waist-bound white robe with sleeves long like flowing clouds. His handsome face bore sharp, proud brows, and just standing there, he possessed a lofty spirit that commanded the world, without losing the transcendent demeanor of a cultivator. Compared to him, Yang Jian seemed ordinary. Usually, Yang Jian stood out among his fellow disciples, but next to Hao, he was easily overlooked. Sister, over the years, master has been extremely kind to me. I haven't suffered at all. An Xian said happily. Hao stood in front of Guan, and suddenly didn't know how to address him. Brother Hao, have you forgotten me? Guan asked with a smile, his demeanor warm as the spring breeze, instantly easing Hao's awkwardness. How could I forget? We've been through life and death together. Thank you for taking care of my sister over the years, which has eased many of my worries. Hao smiled, then took out a brocade box to present to Guan. Guan quickly declined, but under the joint persuasion of an Xian and Hao, he could only reluctantly accept it. The box contained 8th-rank medicinal herbs. The young man was thoughtful, and Hao's gaze inevitably landed on Yang Jian, who had been unabashedly staring at him since earlier. How could he not have noticed? Intuition told him Yang Jian was not simple. He felt like he was facing impermanence Tian. Of course, while Yang Jian was far from as strong, Hao suspected he might also possess an ancient treasure body. Who is this? Hao asked proactively. My disciple Yang Jian, Guan replied with a smile, finding the rivalry between the two disciples interesting. Yang Jian? True Lord Erlang? Hao laughed. Yang Jian, serious, said, I want to spar with you. He could see now that Hao was definitely not the mysterious senior disciple, which diminished his awe for Hao somewhat. In his mind, only that senior brother could surpass him. As the master said, his talent was stronger at the moment. Hao's smile vanished as he began to size up Yang Jian. An Xian wanted to interject but hesitated, looking at Guan to find him smiling without interruption. Hao spoke, You're not strong enough, but I acknowledge your talent and courage. How about we agree to settle it at the Heavenless tournament in the future? What do you think? Chapter 316. Mysterious Heavenly Demon. You think your sword venerable Fudao? The sect can't go on without you? Ji Xiaoyu couldn't help but say. Her angry glare was actually quite charming. Guan thought as much, but said, making contributions, does it really have to be divided by cultivation levels? Guarding the sect outside is merit, as is guarding Medicine Valley. I cultivate medicinal herbs for the supreme sect with all my might. Isn't that also a laborious and meritorious deed? Ji Xiaoyu tried to calm her emotions, and began to speak of the great advantage of that opportunity. Despite Ji Xiaoyu's persuasion, Guan just wouldn't agree, which infuriated her. Another person was just as infuriated, and that was Hao. No matter how he persuaded, an Xian simply refused to follow him to the Star Sea congregations. That day Ji Xiaoyu left the Third Medicine Valley. Less than an hour after her departure, Hao also stormed off, Though he was not leaving the supreme sect, he still needed to return to the main city of sect to have a talk with the higher-ups. Dusk descended. Guan and an Exian stood in front of the wooden railings, their shadows elongating with the setting sun. Guan, admiring the desolate beauty of the sunset, softly asked, "Don't you regret it?" An Exian turned her head, looked at Guan's profile, and asked, "Master, do you have any regrets?" "Ha, we're different. Ji Xiaoyu has the Ji family behind her, but in how only has you?" Guan shook his head with a bitter smile. An Exian looked to the horizon and said, "He has more than just me, and his heart holds the entire mortal world. He's long since not the senior brother I knew. I can't be the stumbling block in his path." For some reason, Guan suddenly felt the impulse to focus on cultivating an Exian. It would be interesting to have an Exian surpass in Hao. Unfortunately, for now he could only contemplate it, as reversing the gap between the two was not so easy. The master and disciple began to discuss matters overseas, imagining how powerful the Star Sea congregations were, and how awe-inspiring the sea-breaking rift would be. In life, one always wishes to see the whole world, to measure mountains and rivers. Above the sea of clouds, Blood Prison Great Saint carried Guan as they flew, feeling the vibrant spiritual energy of the region, and couldn't help but take a deep breath. "Master, where exactly is this place?" Blood Prison Great Saint couldn't resist asking. Guan replied, "Another sect I've joined. You must not reveal this to anyone, including Jenner." Upon hearing this, Blood Prison Great Saint's body shivered, feeling a surge of excitement rush to the top of his skull, unable to contain his exhilaration. A secret only he knew? Perfect. Didn't this mean he had surpassed Yang Jian in the heart of his master? Serves that kid right for wanting to go out and make a name for himself. Blood Prison Great Saint thought gleefully. Since meeting in Hao, Yang Jian had been practicing even harder, saying that in the future he wanted to go out and make a name even more renowned than in Hao's. That kid really didn't understand the heart of the master. The master with his unfathomable Tao level was a hermit in the bustling world, clearly disliking the high-profile life. Yang Jian was truly drifting away. Guan could feel Blood Prison Great Saint's excitement, his bovine body trembling as if this fellow was simply overwhelmed by the rare opportunity to travel far. This place was none other than Mortal World Peak. Guan disliked the slow pace of Blood Prison Great Saint, and used his divine thought to help speed him up. After they entered the peaks of the Mortal World Peak, Blood Prison Great Saint looked around curiously, his bovine eyes wide open, as if a countryman had entered the city for the first time. And so they arrived at Dingtian Peak. Ever since Guan extinguished Mo Hen the Old Man, Dingtian Peak had seen a surge in popularity, with an increase in the number of disciples, and students coming and going from all directions. Blood Prison Great Saint could feel the aura of those along the way and was secretly shocked. How did it feel like any random person was stronger than he was before the seal? Guan, leading him, went all the way to the mountain top. As soon as they landed, Zhu Xinglan appeared. Bowing respectfully towards Guan, Blood Prison Great Saint sized up Zhu Xinglan with curious eyes. "Master, a mysterious cave was discovered within Dingtian Peak, containing powerful restrictions. Would you like to take a look?" Zhu Xinglan asked. Upon hearing this, Guan nodded and asked him to lead the way. Along the way, Zhu Xinglan briefed him on the cave at the foot of the mountain, nearly submerged under the sea surface, discovered by two disciples during a combat practice. Zhu Xinglan suspected it was related to the previous insurrection, which had been a while ago, but according to him, terrible demons had emerged at that time, nearly destroying Dingtian Peak to the ground, to the extent that the peak master had fallen. Guan couldn't help but think of Mo Hen the Old Man. Considering Qingtian Peak was a better choice, but Mo Hen the Old Man chose Dingtian Peak. Could it be because of that cave? Blood Prison Great Saint was even more excited, not expecting to encounter something so thrilling upon arrival. They flew downward and quickly reached the entrance of the cave, where two wandering immortals stood guard. Upon seeing Guan, they quickly stood up and saluted. Guan nodded, then asked Blood Prison Great Saint to follow Zhu Xinglan into the cave. With Zhu Xinglan leading the way, he could not help but wonder why his master was riding a mere mortal ox. Such a fortunate ox head. Guan had just entered the cave and felt a subtle aura. The aura of a heavenly demon? He asked. Has this been reported to the main peak? Zhu Xinglan shook his head. No, the main peak's master has been in seclusion, and Mortal World Peak has always managed its own affairs. He paused, then added, You are the peak master. As long as you do not abdicate, everything about Dingtian Peak is yours. These words made Guan feel comfortable in his heart, and he became increasingly satisfied with Zhu Xinglan. The guy was simply the perfect Hu Xiaojian, so easy to use. Bypassing the long cave tunnel, they arrived at a spacious chamber. Guan could sense the thick space restriction here, almost like an exotic world's dimension, making the place look extremely vast. The chamber wasn't too dark, floating with countless bright lights, like fireflies, which were actually spiritual energy condensed into form. They stood on an array platform, where a stone pillar stood erect, pitch black, with a rough surface, reflecting a cold light. Guan got off Blood Prison Great Saint's back and approached the stone pillar. With his hand on the stone pillar, a powerful force erupted, startling Zhu Xinglan into immediately deploying his mana to defend, not forgetting to protect Blood Prison Great Saint. Zhu Xinglan's eyes widened as he saw Gu An's hand actually penetrate the stone pillar, the point of contact glowing eerily as if it were the mouth of an exotic world. A gale followed from that mysterious mouth, the wind black as midnight, like countless sinister Dao patterns, sending shivers down the spine of both Zhu Xinglan and Blood Prison Great Saint. Guan withdrew his hand, holding a soul in his grasp, a soul body of an old man, about as large as a baby. He was held by Guan, unable to break free, his face full of fear. Dark Soul Ancestor, Divine Immortal of Wondrous Dharma Realm Level 31209894/1300000/1900000. Guan looked at the other's age and raised an eyebrow. Zhu Xinglan couldn't help but caution. Master, be careful. Gu An's right hand clenched, and the Dark Soul Ancestor disintegrated. Zhu Xinglan, seeing this, sighed in relief and asked, Master, what realm was he at? He could feel that the Dark Soul Ancestor was very sinister, but what realm he was from, he couldn't tell. Chapter 317 Demon Fetus. You have successfully acquired 9,670 years of lifespan from the Dark Soul Ancestor, Divine Immortal of Wondrous Dharma Realm, 3rd level. Looking at the prompt before him, Guan remained indifferent. If it were not for the other party charging at him directly, he would not have bothered to kill him. The reason he did not perform the soul search was because the space within the stone pillar still concealed other heavenly demons. Guan casually responded, It's just a demon soul. Its realm, high or low, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter? Zhu Xinglan opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. Gu An's divine thought locked onto the space inside the stone pillar, where within that pitch-black space, there existed yet another aura of a heavenly demon that was even more terrifying. His divine thought captured the location of that heavenly demon. It turned out to be a demon egg. The demon egg, formed from demonic qi and about a zhang tall, emitted a faint glow, like the weak starlight in the dark universe. Gu An's divine thought penetrated the demon egg, and saw a demon infant. He saw the demon infant entwined with heavy and complex karma, even making him feel uneasy, his intuition telling him that eradicating the demon infant would bring greater trouble. He withdrew his divine thought and also stopped his actions, restoring the restriction on the stone pillar. He turned and said to Zhu Xinglan, From now on no one must enter this place, and you must not disturb this stone pillar. There is a fearsome heavenly demon inside, difficult to handle, and it has yet to awaken. Hearing this, Zhu Xinglan immediately became nervous and muttered, Heavenly demon. Sure enough, the previous problem has not been completely resolved. Guan couldn't help but ask, did the previous internal upheaval on Dingtian Peak have to do with the heavenly demon? That's right, that terrible evil demon was a heavenly demon. It said that the former peak master was transformed by the heavenly demon. The sect feared that spreading the word would stir up greater turmoil, so they concealed the fact. Zhu Xinglan nodded, his face full of worry. The greater turmoil he referred to was the Holy Court, which has the deepest apprehension for heavenly demons. Guan suddenly thought of Yu Yingying and Shinxinzi. Could there be other heavenly demon reincarnations in the world? He felt it was very likely. He sensed he had triggered an extraordinary side plot. He did not want to get involved, so he prepared to seal this place, especially since the demon fetus was still in slumber. As such, it's even more crucial not to speak of this, understood? Guan cautioned. As for informing the Holy Court, he had considered it, but the matter of him casually killing a divine immortal of wondrous dharma could likely be exposed due to that, and Mortal World Peak does not trust the Holy Court either. Otherwise they would not have concealed the matter of the heavenly demon. After all, he came here to plant herbs. The well-being of Mortal World Peak has nothing to do with him. Of course, when he becomes strong enough to ignore the karma of the demon fetus, he could then erase the being, giving himself greater peace of mind. Zhu Xinglan nodded, but the deep furrows in his brow did not smooth out. The blood prison great saint looked thoughtfully at the stone pillar. Afterward, they left the cave. Zhu Xinglan began to seal the entrance and Guan rode the blood prison great saint back to the mountaintop. The blood prison great saint had many questions he wanted to ask, but he was afraid of being overheard by the great cultivator, so he had to swallow his words. In the following time, Guan began picking medicinal herbs at Mortal World Peak. Zhu Xinglan had already set up a large medicine garden, which was guarded by disciples on regular days. When Guan personally came to pick herbs, the disciples were initially taken aback by the honor, but later got used to it. Of course, no matter how approachable Guan seemed to be, they always remained reserved. After half a day's stay on Dingtian Peak, Guan left with several hundreds of thousands of years of lifespan. He came to pick herbs once a month, and the lifespan income from Dingtian Peak last year had already broken 1,000,000 years, surpassing his foundation on the Taitsong continent. After returning to the Supreme Sect, just as the blood prison great saint was about to speak, Guan stopped him. Remember what I said when we left, don't ask, you will see through everything eventually. Guan's words made the blood prison great saint grow respectful. He felt that his master was instructing him. His nature was too impulsive, which is why he ended up like this, indeed needing to cultivate his Taoist heart. In Mortal World Peak, Guan was the revered peak master, and in the Supreme Sect, he was just an ordinary valley master. Watching Guan chatting and laughing with the servant disciples, the blood prison great saint was incredibly impressed. He felt the master wasn't pretending. In the master's heart, all sentient beings truly are equal. The distinction of strength lies in one's cultivation level, but the life of every creature is equal. The blood prison great saint increasingly felt there was much to learn from his master, such as this way of interacting with others, which surely would lead to many good connections. If someone could defy the heavens and change their fate, these tales might spread far and wide in the future. However, his realization was quickly shattered, because that detestable fat mouse came to harass him again. What made him most exasperated was that the fat mouse became even faster. How could he feel that this mouse also possessed peerless talent? This was too absurd. Guan then started to inspect the different sectors within Medicine Valley. Although the third Medicine Valley seldom had trouble, he still had to perform his duties on the surface, to prevent the disciples from slacking. Summer passed and autumn arrived. In the early autumn season, within the Outer World Cave, Tian Yaoer, Tianqing, and Tianbai were attacking Guan together. The three demons constantly changed their movement techniques, their demon energy rolling like a dragon. Surrounding Guan facing their offensive, Guan seemed quite at ease. With just a wave of his hand, he could resolve their spells. Tian Yaoer stepped on the 9 Extremes Freedom Steps and appeared behind Guan. She struck with her palm, from which fire surged, rapidly expanding into the shape of a phoenix and swallowing him whole. The next second, the fire phoenix immediately scattered, causing Tian Yaoer to be shaken and fly backward. Guan then raised his leg, and countless shadows burst forth, causing Tianqing and Tianbai to lose their composure. Unable to defend in time, they were hit by the leg shadows one after another and were knocked flying, landing clumsily far away. The three demons struggled to get up, looking at Guan with aggrieved expressions on their faces. If this were a real fight to the death, you would be dead by now. There aren't many people out there who will indulge you like I do. Guan commented nonchalantly while withdrawing his leg. Tian Yaoer widened her eyes and asked, "Is every creature out there as powerful as you?" "There are always people beyond you, heavens beyond heavens," Guan casually answered. He had already restrained himself enough not to injure them. "Is that so?" Tian Yaoer was skeptical. She always felt that whenever Guan mentioned fearing this and that, it was all to scare them, while he himself seemed forever calm and composed. Guan snorted. "Anyway, you still need more practice." Tianqing and Tianbai immediately approached, clinging to Guan's arms and sweetly agreeing with Master. This made Tian Yaoer grit her teeth with irritation. Why did it seem as though the other two had been spoiled rotten? After Guan gave a few more pieces of advice, he took his leave. Tian Yaoer immediately pounced on Tianqing and Tianbai, and the second battle commenced. The autumn wind swept through, blowing a leaf into the courtyard where an elderly man in rich attire was sweeping the floor. It was none other than the aged Xiaochuan. Xiaochuan held the broom with both hands and swept slowly, as if his sweeping was not just cleaning the ground, but also a gesture of refinement. A young boy ran into the yard, spotting Xiaochuan, and couldn't help but exclaim, "Grandfather, why are you sweeping again? Is sweeping that fun? It's not like we have no servants in the house." The young man wore blue clothes, had a fair face, and appeared to be around 15 or 16 years old, with his hair tied up high, exuding youthful vigor. Xiaochuan didn't stop his sweeping but replied with a kindly smile, "It's not about fun, it's a habit. Sweeping helps me reminisce about the past. When you get old like me, you too will love to look back. You're young and don't understand." The boy stepped forward, hands on his hips, discontentedly saying, "Grandpa, I heard you once practiced in the immortal sect. Why don't you recommend us to enter the supreme sect and cultivate? Cultivation is not forbidden to ordinary people." Over the years, cultivators have appeared in the city from time to time, and the magistrate's grandson has even gone for cultivation. "Grandpa, although our family has money, it's not enough. We must think long-term." He rambled continuously, while Xiaochuan watched him complain without getting angry. Once he finished, Xiaochuan suddenly asked, "What if you go to the immortal sect and discover your cultivation talent to be very ordinary, inferior to anyone around you, being left behind by them continuously? What would you do?" The boy glanced with disbelief. "How could I be that bad?" "Your grandfather, I was just that bad. But people are different, right? If someone with exceptional talent emerged from our family, wouldn't that be a blessing for generations? And even you would benefit." "Heh, your uncle once went to an immortal cultivation sect. His talent was mediocre, and he nearly died in a conflict with cultivators. Whether someone is extraordinarily talented or not, these eyes of mine can see." Xiaochuan shook his head and said, as each descendant grew up, they would come and ask him these questions. He had also sent children to practice, but the results were always unsatisfying. Of course, he didn't send them to the supreme sect. He didn't want to cause more trouble for his senior brother. If they couldn't succeed in other sects, how could they go to the supreme sect? "But can you really see that clearly?" the boy asked with wide eyes, his face turning red with urgency. Just as Xiaochuan was about to respond, his eyes suddenly widened. Guan walked into the courtyard, looking around as if searching for something. When Guan spotted Xiaochuan, he too broke into a smile. Noticing his grandfather's expression, the boy turned his head to look and then frowned, sizing up Guan and asking, "Who are you? I haven't seen you before?" Thwack. Xiaochuan smacked the back of his head, not too harshly, and scolded with a smile. "Do you remember everyone in the house apart from the maids? Beat it." The boy pouted but had to leave, sizing up Guan as he went. Chuanyue Chi Cultivation Realm, first level 15/80/180. Guan gestured playfully at Chuanyue, causing Chuanyue to glare at him. Once the boy left, Xiaochuan stepped forward and hugged Guan excitedly. "Senior brother, how come you're here?" Xiaochuan was ecstatic. Guan was slightly annoyed. "When your grandson was here, why didn't you call me senior brother?" Xiaochuan grinned. "That was to prevent him from clinging to you once he realized your identity. You are a high cultivator of the supreme sect, at least in his eyes." Looking at the signs of aging on Xiaochuan's face, Guan felt a sense of nostalgia. Why stop the children from seeking the immortal path? I'm not stopping them. They just want to use my connections to get in. If they truly possess the talent, they will rise even without my intervention. Xiaochuan shook his head. His words seemed to make sense to Guan. Decades had passed, and Xiaochuan had become more mature, with the sediment of years evident on him. No longer the silent youth who once followed Guan. Chapter 318. Peering into Life. The so-called Will of Heaven. Guan and Xiaochuan sat in the courtyard chatting with great enthusiasm about the past. When they spoke of those olden times, they both harbored many sighs. And when it came to those long-departed friends, they would fall into brief silences. I sent you out of the valley, these many decades. Have you been satisfied with your life? Guan asked. Xiaochuan smiled and said, Of course I'm satisfied. At least I have no regrets in life. I've even glimpsed the immortal path. How can a mortal who achieves my level not be content? Those who aren't satisfied are probably oppressed their whole life. With that state of mind, no matter how high their cultivation level is, they'll never be content. Guan couldn't help but raise his teacup to toast him. Such openness was truly rare. Guan had harbored resentments towards Xiaochuan before for not cultivating diligently. Now he thought about it. Even if Xiaochuan didn't achieve much in immortal cultivation, he has at least lived a life more joyous than worrisome. However, the thought that Xiaochuan wouldn't live for many more years made Guan somewhat reluctant to part. He had experienced this feeling many times during the reincarnation evolution, especially in the life of Long Zhan. Long Zhan's drastic change in temperament was because he had lived through too many such events, particularly the death of his beloved wife, which deeply traumatized him. The powerful Long Zhan realized that even with his strength, he would have regrets, which was why he ventured alone into the universe. Xiaochuan seemed to understand Guan's mood and said to comfort him, Senior brother, although you haven't started a family, there are many who care about you. You won't be alone. Guan suddenly asked, What if they were all like you? What should I do then? Xiaochuan was stunned. He looked deep into Guan's eyes and said, Senior brother, anyone else might worry about this question, but you needn't. You treat people kindly, always making friends. Besides, solitude isn't necessarily torture. Isn't the choice of what life you want to lead based on your heart? I can be so open-minded because I learned it from you. Ever since I was little, I've admired you the most. No matter how powerfully your senior brother is, in my eyes he doesn't compare to you, because you live freely and can protect the people you want to care for. Upon saying this, Xiaochuan smiled again. Guan suddenly felt an impulse. This time he wouldn't just go along with Xiaochuan's wishes. Guan took out a secret book and threw it on the table. Xiaochuan instinctively looked at it. Surprised, he asked, What is this? This records a kind of spell. Guan began to introduce, and with just a sentence, Xiaochuan became entranced. Guan took this chance to enlighten Xiaochuan, immersing his thoughts in the heaven and earth rules, allowing him to momentarily forget about outside matters. Autumn winds swept up the fallen leaves in the courtyard, as if fate refused to let them settle on the ground. Above the sea, dressed in black, Liya stood on a black eagle's back, his gaze fixed on the distance. Above the sea-breaking rift hung a majestic and mighty floating island, on which stood a city emanating an awe-inspiring aura that commanded respect from all living beings. Broken Sea Domain Master City. Liya muttered to himself, frowning. A divine exotic immortal spirit appeared on his shoulder and said softly, There are terrifying things hidden there, that will eat me, don't go near. Hearing this, Liya's frown deepened as it was the first time he heard the divine exotic immortal spirit say such a thing. He took a deep breath, then stamped his foot, and the black eagle flapped its wings harder, speeding up like an arrow, quickly diving into the sea-breaking rift. Once inside the dark rift, Liya breathed a sigh of relief, his gaze looking down with determination. Zhang Buku, wait for me, I haven't given up on you. Liya's hands tightened into fists within his sleeves, and he drew his heavy sword, ready for battle. Meanwhile, far away in Mystic Valley, Guan was picking medicinal herbs. He couldn't help but stand up and look into the distance. It had been 10 years since he had lectured Xiaochuan. Over those years, he hadn't seen Xiaochuan again and had immersed himself back into his life. In those 10 years, he had extended his lifespan by more than 18 million years, and so had been happy every year. It was not until today that the divine exotic immortal spirit told him. It sensed a dangerous presence. The divine exotic immortal spirit claimed to feel the presence of a natural enemy within the Broken Sea Domain Master City. An extremely sinister presence. Guan probed with divine thought and discovered a heavenly demon within the Broken Sea Domain Master City. Another heavenly demon. This heavenly demon also possessed the cultivation level of a divine immortal of wondrous dharma. Unlike the dark soul ancestor before, this one was a living spirit. There he was, hidden in a dark palace, separated by many restrictions. No matter how Guan saw it, he didn't look like a prisoner. Could it be that the holy king behind the great cold demon sect had a connection with the heavenly demon? Guan didn't alarm them. Exterminating demons was easy, but severing causality was difficult. It was better for both sides to wait, even though he did not know what the other side was waiting for, but he knew he was growing stronger every year. Nirvana, loose immortal, wandering immortal, heaven and earth flying immortal, carefree primordial immortal, divine immortal of wondrous dharma, Tao void mysterious immortal, and divine thought true immortal. In this world where even carefree primordial immortals were rare, Guan, in the realm of divine thought true immortal, had the confidence to face all trials. Guan watched for a while longer, then withdrew his divine thought. He wasn't panicked by the calculations of that holy king. He felt that the holy king might be a pawn of the heavenly demon. Inviting the hostility of the heavenly demon for personal grievances, though not afraid, was unnecessary. Guan continued picking medicinal herbs, humming a little tune. Once he finished picking the medicinal herbs, he left Mystic Valley. He arrived on the eaves of a building at the Chuan residence, his gaze on Xiaochuan, who was cultivating in the courtyard. After that enlightenment, Xiaochuan devoted more time to cultivation, a subject he had mentioned to no one. Guan saw that Xiaochuan's ultimate lifespan had increased to 415 years. Not too bad. He then peeked into Xiaochuan's causality. On a typical day, Guan wouldn't only be playing around, he cultivated too. What he studied the most was the causality of life. He could now probe the entire lives of mortals. Even if a 3-year-old child stood before him, he could see the end of their life in an instant. As expected, Xiaochuan's life had changed. Previously, Guan saw Xiaochuan passing away with a peaceful and regret-free departure. This time he saw Xiaochuan surviving past his original lifespan's end, with the Chuan house also producing a generation with stronger talent for cultivation. But as he watched, Guan's brows furrowed. Xiaochuan died at age 413, not living out his full ultimate lifespan because his descendants offended a powerful cultivation family. Worn out from too much exertion, he died of depression in the end. Guan suddenly felt that his enlightenment of Xiaochuan might not have been such a good thing. But on second thought, he'd simply take action when the time came. He was the biggest variable in Xiaochuan's life causality. With that in mind, Guan looked towards the other members of the Chuan family, peering into their lives. A mortal's life seems long to them but is short in his eyes. Their decades of experience would just flash by him, causing no burden and not affecting him in the slightest. That was the strength of a divine thought true immortal. Not to say divine thought true immortal. Even a Tao void mysterious immortal could reach this degree. It wasn't long before Guan's gaze landed on a boy called Chuan Qi. Chuan Qi, untrained in Qi cultivation 3/120/1050. Such talent was definitely the strongest among Xiaochuan's descendants. Guan began to probe into Chuan Qi's life. It wasn't Chuan Qi who offended the cultivation family, but another member of the Chuan house. After Xiaochuan's death, Chuan Qi left the family and ventured alone into the immortal cultivation world. This youngster actually lived past the years of his ultimate lifespan, meaning he would encounter great fortunes in the future, the specifics of which Guan could not determine from causality, until Chuan Qi met a girl. After that, the causality broke, and his future became unfathomable. When Guan saw the girl, He could instantly tell she harbored a heavenly demon's soul. Another heavenly demon. Exactly how many heavenly demons had infiltrated the great heavenly spirit land? Guan frowned and continued to scan the others. He stood proudly on the eaves, unseen by those passing through the courtyard below. After 30 minutes, Guan finally returned to the third medicine valley. He stepped down from the transmission array platform, pondering over causality and fate. Guan, come over for a game of Go. A voice called out, and as Guan turned his head, the caller was none other than the nine-fingered Divine Lord. In recent years, Lu Xianyi and stealing the 5 elements had left. There were only 2 great cultivators left in the valley, Shen Xinzi and the nine-fingered Divine Lord. Shen Xinzi was not very interested in Go, preferring to study Journey to the West and Investiture of the Gods. Guan didn't understand why Shen Xinzi could keep on reading those 2 books over and over, but he chose to respect his choices. Guan walked towards the nine-fingered Divine Lord while simultaneously probing his causality and fate. The higher the opponent's cultivation level, the shorter the lifespan Guan could see. The nine-fingered Divine Lord's lifespan and causality were extremely complex, staying consistent for decades, but Guan could no longer see beyond 50 years into the future. Guan settled down before the Go board. As he opened the Go box, he asked, "Predecessor, you have lived for a long time. Tell me, should cultivators intervene in the lives of mortals, even with good intentions?" The nine-fingered Divine Lord looked at him in surprise upon hearing this question, never expecting him to ask such a thing. "You've asked the right person. I think one shouldn't. Cultivation itself is a path against nature. Intervening in a mortal's life will only bring them calamity. There is a will of heaven inherent within the universe. Once, I faced a trial. That ordeal left me gravely injured, losing a finger, but it also confirmed for me the existence of the will of heaven. There is certainly a force beyond the reach and touch of cultivators that may lack consciousness, but it controls the fate of all beings. The higher my cultivation, the more I feel its vastness." As he spoke, a hint of fear even appeared in the eyes of the nine-fingered Divine Lord. Guan curiously asked, "Is it from Holy Court?" Ever since the establishment of the Broken Sea domain, Holy Court had entered the collective consciousness of the beings on the continent, becoming an institution representing the divine forces amidst mortal beings. The nine-fingered Divine Lord shook his head and said, "No, Holy Court is also at the mercy of this force. From what I know, between this world and the universe lies a barrier of power that prevents mortal spirits from flying out. It is like a set of rules, and even the Holy Court must obey." Guan looked up, indeed aware of such rules. It was a layer of light enveloping the great heavenly spirit land that forced living beings to reach the heaven and earth flying immortal realm before they could fly to the universe. Even as a divine thought true immortal, Guan could not see through these rules. The divine origin realm where Longzhan was not restricted by such rules. Guan looked up at the sky and placed a stone onto the center of the Go board. Chapter 319. Fighting against the heavens. After a fierce and exhilarating battle, the nine-fingered Divine Lord looked extremely displeased. He lifted his eyes to look at Guan and asked through gritted teeth, "Where exactly is the problem?" Guan shrugged and said, "I don't know. Why can you always guess my next move? Intuition tells me where you'll play next, and as long as I guess right, you seem to get flustered and keep changing your strategy, eventually exposing your weaknesses." Guan's response infuriated the nine-fingered Divine Lord so much that he nearly coughed up blood. Guan's smile faded as he said, "However, this game of chess has indeed made me understand that change can indeed bring disaster. Thank you for your teachings, Senior." With that, he stood up, gave a formal bow, and took his leave. The nine-fingered Divine Lord watched Guan's retreating figure and opened his mouth, but ultimately, his gaze fell back on the chessboard. Guan walked towards his loft with a smile on his face. In fact, there was one more thing he didn't say. Change can indeed lead to disaster, but whether it's for better or worse depends on the player himself. Life is like a game of chess, and Guan intends to be a player who always wins, even if his opponent is what they call fate. To struggle against destiny is a joy, isn't it? Having come to this realization, Guan no longer felt burdened. He didn't intend to casually change others' lives, only the lives of those he cared about. Xiaochuan was indeed open-minded, but his wish to be reborn into a good life in the next life also showed his longing for immortal cultivation, just lacking in innate talent. Guan also realized that as long as he kept getting stronger, he could keep pushing the limits of those around him. What cannot be achieved now does not mean it cannot be done in the future. Reincarnation might exist, but he only wished to strive for the present. This Ji Xiaoyu was not the same person from his past life, and Guan was not Long Zhan, Xiao Xingtian or Chu Lu. In the divine exotic realm, beneath the blood-red sky and above the sea of clouds, Zhang Buku stood shoulder to shoulder with the master of divine exotic realm, overlooking the battle below. Endless waves of divine exotic resentful ghosts besieged Liya, coming at him like relentless waves, never ceasing. Without the divine exotic city, Liya was embroiled in a difficult fight. The divine exotic resentful ghosts are undying. With his capabilities, at most he can hold on for one ancient hour, said the master of divine exotic realm, expressionless. Zhang Buku turned to him and asked, "Why won't you let me meet him? I can make things clear." "What things clear?" "Say that someone is backing you, forcing me to not restrict you, and even taking you as a disciple?" The master of divine exotic realm glanced at him coldly and asked. Zhang Buku frowned, not understanding his meaning. The master of divine exotic realm scoffed. "Do you think the city in the sky was built to suppress us? If so, why don't they invade? If not for you, then for whom was it established?" asked Zhang Buku in confusion, his eyes widening with surprise. "Could it be for Sword Venerable Fu Dao? Wait, could the person who saved me be Sword Venerable Fu Dao?" Zhang Buku was utterly shocked. So the sparrow had Sword Venerable Fu Dao backing it. The master of divine exotic realm gazed down at Liya and said, "After all these years, he's the only one to have broken in. Might this person have some karmic connection with Sword Venerable Fu Dao?" Zhang Buku hesitated for a moment, then nodded and said, "He received the legacy of Sword Venerable Fu Dao and learned his swordsmanship." He left unsaid the claim that Liya had made, that Sword Venerable Fu Dao was his primordial ancestor. He now understood that it must have been arranged by Sword Venerable Fu Dao for them to meet. But he still couldn't figure out why Sword Venerable Fu Dao had taken an interest in him. So that's how it is. It seems they have reached far and wide. The master of divine exotic realm said somberly. Zhang Buku couldn't help but ask, "Master, isn't Holy Court supposed to be good? You've said before that the Holy King doesn't represent Holy Court." The master of divine exotic realm took a deep breath and said, "He didn't represent it before, but now it's not certain. The Holy Court tried to recruit Sword Venerable Fu Dao, but he didn't accept the Qi Fortune outcome. That's enough for the Holy Court to be wary. In fact, there is a certain power in this world that the Holy Court fears. We are the evolution of that power. It's precisely because of this that the Holy King has kept me, wanting to use me to identify that power." Zhang Buku quickly asked about the nature of that power. The master of divine exotic realm uttered two words. "Heavenly demon." Zhang Buku frowned. This was the first time he had heard of the heavenly demon. "Can you spare him?" Zhang Buku asked through gritted teeth. He didn't understand what a heavenly demon was. All he wanted was for his brother to live. The master of divine exotic realm said somberly, "I've already delayed the time, but if Sword Venerable Fu Dao doesn't appear and I let him go, then it's you and me who will die." Upon hearing this, Zhang Buku looked around. He increasingly felt as if there were eyes watching him from the shadows. He noticed the master of divine exotic realm's hand on his waist casting a spell. He looked back down and his eyes hardened. He was about to rush to help, but as he leaned forward, a hand pressed down on him. He turned to look, and the person holding his shoulder was the master of divine exotic realm. The master of divine exotic realm's expression was indifferent. At this moment, his look made Zhang Buku feel alienated and cold. The thought of Liya possibly dying was the thing Zhang Buku couldn't accept the most. He wanted to speak, but he couldn't utter a sound. In the vast sea of ghosts, Liya wielded his heavy sword, sweeping powerfully in all directions, But no matter how many divine exotic resentful ghosts he vanquished, more swarmed in. Damn it. Do you really acknowledge me as your master? Why won't you listen to me? Liya cursed in his heart. He was unable to harness the power of the divine exotic city, which frustrated him greatly. No. It will devour me. The voice of the divine exotic immortal spirit rang out, filled with fear. Liya was infuriated by this. How had this creature become so gutless? Damn it! Was he to die here before even seeing Zhang Buku? If junior brother Gu knew of his death, would he grieve? No, that's wrong. Having been gone for so long and so far away, would junior brother Gu reach the end of his life still thinking about conquering the world? Perhaps that's for the best. Li Ya's sword swings began to slow. Flashes of memories from his youth passed before his eyes. When he and Meng Lang and Liya had all entered the Mystic Valley, with Meng Lang gone missing, and now him about to die here. Who would have thought the least talented Guan would be the last one alive? What a twist of fate. A divine exotic resentful ghost suddenly lunged at Liya, holding a soul sword whose cold light shattered all the visions before his eyes and filled his pupils. Am I going to die? Li Ya's pupils dilated. Just then, his body burst into golden light, like unstoppable waves wiping out all the surrounding divine exotic resentful ghosts. Liya was taken aback by the sudden change in the scenery as a golden city's phantom emerged from within him, rapidly enlarging to envelope him. The divine exotic city. Liya was overjoyed, ready to ask why the divine exotic immortal spirit had suddenly chosen to defy, when a terrifying and unmatched pressure descended, enveloping the whole world. Have you finally decided to come forth, Sword Venerable Fudao? To entrust such an immortal path supreme treasure to a mere mortal child for amusement. What a grand gesture. An ancient and majestic voice sounded, causing Liya to become stunned. The primordial ancestor. Chapter 320. Great Nether Saint King Divine Exotic City appeared, and the entire dim world was illuminated by dazzling golden light. Among it, Liya stared dumbfoundedly at his surroundings. He could feel that the power of Divine Exotic City was stronger than when he had used it, and it was incomparable. This meant that the voice from earlier was telling the truth. Thinking about it, he had never truly mastered the power of Divine Exotic City. It was always commanded by Divine Exotic Immortal Spirit. Above the clouds, the master of Divine Exotic Realm looked at the ever-expanding Divine Exotic City, his eyes flickering, unsure of his thoughts. Zhang Buku, however, felt a surge of relief. Should Sword Venerable Fudao truly arrive, then Liya would be saved. In his heart, Sword Venerable Fudao was an invincible existence, a belief shared by all creatures from the Taitsong continent. A figure materialized next to Liya. He glanced over, his pupils suddenly dilating. It was that familiar demonic shadow. The dark purple demonic chi did not seem evil in his eyes, but rather appeared endearing. Guan tilted his head, glancing towards Liya. Liya quickly raised his hand in salute and said, "Primordial ancestor." Words jammed in his throat, unable to be spoken. Boom! Rolling thunderclouds quickly covered the blood-red heavens, countless thunderbolts twirling like dragons and snakes, immensely spectacular, plunging the land into oppression. The sea of clouds formed a giant face, occupying most of the sky, making everything between heaven and earth seem insignificant. Zhang Buku looked up at this giant face, speechless with shock, feeling an extremely terrifying pressure that he had never experienced before. Even the Master of Divine Exotic Realm looked solemn. The strength of the Master of Divine Exotic Realm was comparable to that of a carefree primordial immortal. Yet he did not possess the comfort of a carefree primordial immortal. This giant face was truly the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma, an existence surpassing the carefree primordial immortal. The Master of Divine Exotic Realm couldn't help but turn his gaze towards Guan inside Divine Exotic City, thinking expectantly, "Sword Venerable Fudao, how will you face this?" Even the powerful Great Cold Demon sect that besieged the continent in the past couldn't achieve such a presence. "Sword Venerable Fudao, why have you not accepted the rewards from the Holy Court?" An aged voice sounded again, stern in tone. Guan slightly lifted his head, his voice reverberating across the heaven and earth. "Why must I accept? Am I considered a demon if I do not join the Holy Court? If the Holy Court truly thought this way, Guan couldn't help but be more wary of the Qi fortune. Is Qi fortune not a form of bondage? None of such, but refusing to join the Holy Court surely has some dubious reason. Sword Venerable Fudao, why do you refuse to show yourself? What exactly are you apprehensive about? The aged voice boomed like thunder, echoing unceasingly. Guan, hearing this, lost all interest in conversing. 3 breaths time. If you don't leave, don't blame me for lacking respect for the Holy Court. Guan's voice was chilling, putting the entire heaven and earth on edge for a killing spree. The giant face above clearly changed, but it did not respond. 3 breaths time seemed so prolonged at this moment. Zhang Buku and Liya dared not even breathe, and the master of divine exotic realm likewise awaited the decision of that mysterious existence. Such a formidable being, and even Sword Venerable Fudao could disregard it. The master of divine exotic realm was profoundly moved, believing his choice was right. He could easily kill Liya, but the reason he hadn't was purely out of respect for Sword Venerable Fudao. After 3 breaths, Guan raised his right hand, his palm facing the giant face in the sky. Sword Venerable. As he began to speak, the giant face in the sky suddenly vanished, and Guan withdrew his hand. The world instantly fell into silence. Liya's eyes widened. He saw the rolling thunderclouds silently torn open, creating a giant hole exactly where the mysterious giant face had been. He instinctively looked towards Guan, seeing an old man enveloped in mist in Guan's palm. The elder full of panic, unable to struggle or escape. Even though the old man was speaking, Liya couldn't hear a word. Guan then disappeared from the spot. Divine exotic immortal spirit appeared on Liya's shoulder, tiny hands patting her small chest, looking extremely relieved. Zhang Buku and the master of divine exotic realm were also stunned. What they had thought would be an unprecedented great war. The master of divine exotic realm had even prepared for the world to shatter. Yet the mysterious great power from the Holy Court was just taken away like this. How high could Sword Venerable Fudao's realm be? The master of divine exotic realm was filled with fear, a terrifying thought suddenly occurring to him. Could it be that Sword Venerable Fudao was truly a heavenly demon, and from the beginning he stood in opposition to the Holy Court? The waves crashed against the shore. Guan sat on the rock, having already activated the lifespan barrier. His right hand opened, containing the old man sitting cross-legged inside, who was indeed the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma stationed at the domain master city of the Broken Sea domain. Guan was performing the great imprisoned soul immortal technique, searching the other's memories. This person, named Luo Shuzi, was a reincarnation of the heavenly demon, holding a 3rd-grade heavenly position in the Holy Court, one of the confidants of the great Nether Saint King. Luo Ziz's many memories were protected by a mystery spell, which would shatter and dissipate automatically if invaded, all related to the great Nether Saint King. Unfortunately, such methods were akin to child's play before Guan's divine sense. He easily deciphered them and glimpsed into Luo Ziz's dealings with the great Nether Saint King. The creation of the Broken Sea domain was indeed set by the great Nether Saint King. Within it was his arch-nemesis, the Candle World Saint King. Initially, the great Nether Saint King merely wanted to exterminate the Candle World Saint King, keeping him eternally in reincarnation. Many under his command took this opportunity for their gain, leading to the calamity in the Broken Sea domain. After Guan made his move, the great Nether Saint King regarded him as an enemy. Now the great Nether Saint King suspected Guan might also be a reincarnation of the heavenly demon. Hence he sent Luo Shuzi over. According to Luo Ziz's memories, the great Nether Saint King was not a heavenly demon, but he was fervently searching for the reincarnation of the heavenly demon, his intentions unknown to anyone. It appears it wasn't the Holy Court aiming for Sword Venerable Fudao, but the great Nether Saint King's intent. The Holy Court had profound depth and numerous factions. Viewing the Broken Sea domain, it seemed vast, but in the eyes of the greater heavenly spirit land, it was but trivial, not even reaching the eyes of the standard 1st-rank heavenly position. The 3rd-grade heavenly position, also known as the Holy King, was not short of position holders in the Holy Court. Ascending further were the second-grade heavenly positions Holy Minister and the first-grade heavenly positions Holy God. After searching Luo Zizi's soul, Guan extinguished his soul. He wasn't concerned about further tricks from the Great Nether Saint King. In fact, he was looking forward to seeing what the Great Nether Saint King would do next. Facing an unknown adversary, regardless of how powerful his minions were, they would fall discreetly. Wouldn't the Great Nether Saint King feel pressured? Although the Holy Court didn't care about the Broken Sea domain, the epic battle between Guan and the Great Cold Demon sect from years ago did reach the Holy Court. The Holy Court's ability to recruit Sword Venerable Fudao also showed that most of the upper echelons in the Holy Court were favorable towards Sword Venerable Fudao's actions, which is why the Great Nether Saint King only dared to operate from the shadows. A prompt appeared before Guan. He had seized over 20,000 years of Luo Zizis lifespan. TSK, these great powers really are brash, acting so recklessly. Of course, facing an existence like Guan, even if they hide their true forms, Guan would find a way to locate them. Back in the seven-star spirit realm, the thousand-faced divine lord who escaped from Guan's clutches could also be located by him now. But seeing him behave, Guan didn't pursue him. Immortal cultivation was never easy. If one could recognize the situation and act accordingly, Guan would still admire that. To date, regarding the thousand-faced divine lord escaping from his hands, frankly, he was somewhat looking forward to seeing how far the thousand-faced divine lord could go. Guan stood up and vanished from the rock. In the main city of the Broken Sea domain, inside a dim grand hall, Domain Master Qing Songzi stood on the steps, hands clasped behind his back, his eyebrows deeply furrowed. How come it suddenly went quiet? Could it be that even Elder Luo Shuzi is not a match for Sword Venerable Fudao? Even if he is not, there shouldn't be silence, Qing Songzi thought, frowning. Dressed in a green robe, he exuded a calm demeanor, appearing in his 40s, with the oppressive aura of someone in power. He possessed the cultivation level of the 7th layer of the carefree primordial immortal realm, and was recognized by the Holy Court as the Domain Master of Broken Sea Domain. He had never felt as anxious as he did today. The sea-breaking rift was just below. If there were any battles, he would definitely detect them immediately. He now dared not extend his divine sense into the rift for fear of provoking trouble. Even if Luo Shuzi failed, Sword Venerable Fudao likely wouldn't dare confront the Holy Court directly. He just needed to pretend ignorance. Just then, a series of footsteps approached. Lu Xianyi came walking briskly, leaving a trail of afterimages. He stopped before the steps, raising his hand in salute to Qing Songzi and smiling. I wonder why the elder has summoned me. What is the matter? Qing Songzi turned to look at him, revealing a smile as he said, I and your father are fellow disciples. What elder are you speaking to? That's too formal. Call me your teacher uncle from now on. Teacher uncle. Lu Xianyi responded, his mind already calculating. The other clearly needed him, which was why he showed such an attitude. As for the Great Nether Saint King behind Qing Songzi, he was also aware. Could it be that the main city of the Broken Sea domain was thwarted by Sword Venerable Fudao? Lu Xianyi inwardly chuckled, knowing that over the years, many of the Holy Court's pieces infiltrated the Taitsong continent, and even the Supreme Sect to investigate Sword Venerable Fudao. He could guess that the Great Nether Saint King was somewhat unrelenting. The Great Cold Demon sect was a powerful weapon in the hands of the Great Nether Saint King, gaining considerable power and authority by performing numerous dirty tasks for the Holy Court. Hence, his power continued to grow, and the errors he made weren't likely to shake his position. Indeed, the calamity in the Broken Sea domain was seen as a mistake by the Great Nether Saint King by the Holy Court, but such a mistake wasn't considered significant. Even several could deduce the Great Nether Saint King's plans against the Candleworld Saint King, many choosing to turn a blind eye. Weighing the ruling Holy King against the reincarnated Holy King was an easy choice. Qing Songzi looked at Lu Xianyi and asked with a smile. Sword Venerable Fudao refuses to accept the Qi fortune from the Holy Court. Having stayed in the Supreme Sect for so many years, what do you think should be done? Should he be left to his own devices, or should his background be investigated? Lu Xianyi thought to himself as expected, and after pondering he said, Teacher uncle, do you think Sword Venerable Fudao is formidable? Of course he's formidable beyond my comparison. Qing Songzi answered without hesitation. Lu Xianyi continued. Since that is the case, why bother to offend him? Wouldn't it be sufficient to just manage the broken sea domain well? Qing Songzi frowned. Lu Xianyi meaningfully said. Sword Venerable Fudao appeared in the land of the reincarnation of the Candle World Saint King. These two very likely have a connection. Why Sword Venerable Fudao hides his identity is worth considering. Teacher uncle, my father once said, surviving in the holy court is like walking on thin ice. No matter how high one's cultivation level is, staying alive is the most important. Chapter 321 Evil Tree. The events that took place within the sea-breaking rift did not spread. And just like that, a divine immortal of wondrous dharma disappeared without a trace. Since then, Guan distinctly felt that the number of people on the continent probing for the sword Venerable Fudao had sharply decreased. It seemed that the master of the broken sea domain had already made a choice. If the holy court truly stopped scheming against Guan, he naturally didn't bother to hold a grudge. Living in peace was what he hoped for. A period of peace came to the broken sea domain, and despite great talents and powers continuously emerging in the world, Guan hid within the supreme sect and observed the world's vicissitudes with a smile. In the blink of an eye, 50 years swiftly passed. Guan returned to the Third Medicine Valley, and looking at his attribute panel, a smile spread across his face. Name: Guan. Lifespan 293/470-569-402. Today's harvest from the Outer World Cave had allowed him to gain nearly 40 million years of lifespan in one go. It was so exhilarating. This was still the first large-scale herbal harvest from the Outer World Cave. Every year, he would plant high-rank medicinal herbs in the Outer World Cave, and the income from lifespan would only increase more and more. 50 years had gone by, and the Supreme Sect was flourishing. Nowadays, in terms of paper strength, it was one of the top great sects on the continent, with only the Seven Stars Spirit Realm comparable. The servant disciples within the Third Medicine Valley had also been largely replaced. Some left, and others came. The scene in the Medicine Valley was much the same as it was 50 years ago. Along the way, Guan greeted his disciples nonstop. This scene left Ji Xiaoyu standing before the pavilion feeling somewhat dazed. After being away for so many years, the fact that the valley remained unchanged made her feel incredibly moved. Guan made his way to the pavilion, sizing up Ji Xiaoyu, and smiled. Many years have passed, yet your aura is even more impressive. Ji Xiaoyu, dressed in green garments, still had an elegant charm. Her flowing clothes resembled a skirt, creating illusions of drifting clouds as they billowed in the wind. She fixed Guan with her gaze and said, "So many years have passed, and you are still at the core formation realm, while I have become a divinity transformation cultivator. Do you regret it?" Regret? How could that be possible? Following you out, always encountering danger? Guan mentally complained. Over the years, he had often used his divine thought to keep watch over Ji Xiaoyu, and he even acted a few times to ensure she always escaped danger by a hair's breadth. He knew all too well what she had been through. "I don't regret it at all. I've had a good time these years." As for cultivation level, slow and steady wins the race. "I will condense the nascent soul sooner or later," Guan replied casually. Ji Xiaoyu scrutinized him closely, and upon confirming that he wasn't lying, a smile appeared on her face. What she admired most was Guan's temperament. She had never seen him angry or envious, as he always seemed to be smiling. "Shall we talk upstairs?" Guan asked with a smile, knowing Ji Xiaoyu had a lot to say. For Guan, the journeys Ji Xiaoyu had embarked upon these past years couldn't compare to the distance of a single step for him. But for her, these decades were lengthy, and he would occasionally hear her murmuring to a campfire when alone. The Stealing the Five Elements, who had been tailing Ji Xiaoyu, had never shown up, merely escorting her in secret for a part of her journey. Once they were upstairs in the house, Ji Xiaoyu began recounting her experiences throughout the years. Her stories were rich, with demon-slaying, thrilling adventures, and even encounters with old grudges. Guan listened intently, chiming in from time to time, keeping Ji Xiaoyu's desire to share stories high. After more than an ancient hour, Ji Xiaoyu finally finished telling her tales. Guan exclaimed, "How exciting, just like the stories narrated by storytellers." Ji Xiaoyu laughed. "I obtained the inheritance left by someone from a previous life. The journey was worthwhile, but it's unknown how far I can go. It should be the second layer of the immortal path." Guan had seen that secret realm, created by a loose immortal, which meant that Ji Xiaoyu's predecessor's highest cultivation realm reached the loose immortal realm. For the current Ji Xiaoyu, how formidable a loose immortal was, practically out of reach. Guan asked with a smile, "What are your plans going forward?" Ji Xiaoyu replied, "Settle for a few decades before considering another journey. The ranking competition is about to begin, which is a good opportunity to enjoy the excitement. The Supreme Sect is not what it used to be, and this ranking competition will surely be lively. It's said that a loose immortal joined the Supreme Sect in the last couple of years. Have you heard about the loose immortal?" As Guan spoke of the competition, he became more talkative. Ji Xiaoyu watched him with a slight smile on her lips. This guy still loved to see the world bustling. Listening to Guan talk about the highlights of the ranking competition, along with the sounds of insects and voices from outside the window, Ji Xiaoyu's heart fell into tranquility. Having witnessed the world's turmoil, she now felt a sense of peace inside, free of any pressure or concern. After spending the afternoon with Ji Xiaoyu, Guan finally left the Third Medicine Valley and headed to the Mystic Valley's 8 scenic caves underground. He arrived in front of the green vine tree, where a large cauldron was set up, surrounded by various instruments. Over the past 30 years, he had been studying the art of artifact refining. He wasn't after creating any phenomenal Dharma treasures, but rather sought realizations through the process of forging. The Dharma treasures he had forged by now were coveted by the Supreme Sect, but he didn't hand them over to the sect, instead tossing them to the immortal-seeking island for sale, exchanging the spirit stones received for seeds and refining materials. With a cultivation of divine thought immortal status, it wasn't difficult for Guan to forge immortal treasures, but creating Supreme Immortal Path treasures was still out of reach. Supreme Immortal Path treasures could only be created by immensely powerful beings standing at the peak of the 9 heavens of the Immortal Path, the crystallization of a lifetime's Tao from a major Immortal Path power. In the entire Great Heavenly Spirit Land, forces that owned Supreme Immortal Path treasures were territorial overlords, and those who could fully wield the power of such treasures were few and far between. At least Guan had yet to see such individuals. Long Zhan had one such treasure. When he reached the pinnacle of the 9 heavens of the Immortal Path, he could suppress an entire universe with just one treasure, incredibly formidable. Guan had just approached the cauldron when it, along with the surrounding instruments, began to blaze with fire. 2 vines stretched from behind, beginning to massage Guan's shoulders. "Master, that guy, are you really not going to intervene?" The voice of the green vine tree sounded, still similar to Jiang Qiong, but weaker. Guan replied, "It's fine, it's impossible for the other party to step foot here." Because of the influence of Sword Venerable Fu Dao, the reputation of the Supreme Sect had far outshone its actual strength. Thus, the upcoming ranking competition also attracted a multitude of overseas cultivators and demons. Among them was a presence that made the green vine tree afraid, and Guan had already located that presence. It was a shape-shifting tree demon, its cultivation having reached the wandering immortal stage, who was currently hiding its cultivation level and joining the ranking competition as a Mahayana cultivator. A wandering immortal posed no threat to Guan, and therefore he didn't care. What he did care about was another individual. Someone from the Immortal Spirit Dynasty had arrived at the Supreme Sect, whose cultivation level was that of a carefree primordial immortal, but had hidden it, presenting themselves merely as an ordinary loose immortal. Of course, even a loose immortal was enough to be treated as an honored guest by the Supreme Sect. Guan was curious about the purpose of the Immortal Spirit Dynasty's visit. There would be quite a show at this ranking competition. "Master, can you subdue him?" The green vine tree cautiously asked. Guan, thinking it was worried, grunted in affirmation. He felt the vines on his shoulders tremble, followed by the voice of green vine tree. Then can you capture him and let me eat him? Guan was taken aback and turned to look at the green vine tree in surprise. It had been so afraid moments ago, and now it wanted to eat someone? He had almost forgotten that the green vine tree came from the Thousand Autumn Pavilion, a demon path sect, so naturally, it could be an evil tree. Don't get any funny ideas, or watch out, I might eat you instead, Guan said in no good mood. The green vine tree used to love eating lamb. If its murderous nature wasn't restrained, Guan feared for his disciples' safety. He kept the green vine tree mainly for the production of the green vine fruit. To him now, the green vine tree was not indispensable. Seemingly sensing Guan's displeasure, the green vine tree fell silent, and the two vines massaging his shoulders became even more careful. The next day at noon, Guan arrived at the outer gate city riding the blood prison Great Saint. The city was overcrowded, and even the air was bustling with a multitude of cultivators and demons. 50 years had passed, and Guan had even more acquaintances in the city. Wherever he went, people greeted him. He also encountered the son of Zhua Yijian, Zhua Lin, who was also Li Ya's childhood friend. Not practicing the sword Dao, he was a genuine prodigy. Now, Zhua Lin had completely abandoned the sword Dao and become a modestly famous talent. The two would meet every year, and their relationship remained strong. Zhua Lin began to complain about his father straight away. It was once again because of sword Venerable Fu Dao that had offended a great cultivator. Day and night, he guarded the heaven-cutting axe. Despite this, Zhua Yijian had offended quite a few, resulting in frequent intrusions and investigations into the Zhua family. Luckily, with sword Venerable Fu Dao around, no one dared make a move. Still, the Zhua family lived in constant fear of a catastrophe befalling them. Suddenly, Guan thought he should probably give Zhua Yijian some advice. To be honest, he clearly saw the devotion in Zhua Yijian's attitude and felt it deserved recognition. He should take the opportunity to guide him, not letting Zhua Yijian's efforts go to waste. After chatting for a while, they parted ways. Guan, using his mind, communicated with the blood prison Great Saint, who changed direction. The crowd surged, vendors on both sides shouted continuously, and Guan rode on the back of the blood prison Great Saint, looking curiously at everything along the way. This feeling was much like attending a fair. Unlike other meetings, the ranking competition was held every 100 years, making it the most important event for the Supreme Sect, and even the entire Taitsong continent, with a liveliness that couldn't be compared to any other time. The arrival of many sects also brought many new items. After 30 minutes, the blood prison Great Saint stopped in front of a pavilion, and Guan dismounted, entering a store named the Pavilion of Wonders. Once inside the hall, his vision was filled with numerous treasures, and his gaze fell upon an individual. Zhang Xianwang, Carefree Primordial Immortal Realm, Level 7359098/70000/250000, 2.5 million years of ultimate lifespan. Guan estimated he had the potential to reach the Dao Void Mysterious Immortal level. This person was the Carefree Primordial Immortal from the Immortal Spirit Dynasty, standing in front of a shelf, toying with a broken flute. Guan stepped forward, passing by his side. Zhang Xianwang didn't pay him any mind, and both stood in front of the same shelf, admiring treasures. After a while, Zhang Xianwang glanced at Guan, and at that glance his eyebrows suddenly raised. "Young man, where do those gold patterns on your forehead come from?" Zhang Xianwang asked, his tone gentle and devoid of any great cultivator's assertiveness. Guan touched his forehead and smiled. "One night, when I woke up, this gold pattern had appeared. Does Daoist friend know its origin?" "I can't understand how you did it. If what you say is true, you might really have the talent for enlightenment," Guan praised. Upon hearing this, a broad smile broke across Shenzhen's face. She chuckled proudly and said, "This painting is for you then. Oh, continue to meditate." With that, she turned and left. Guan didn't see her off. but instead turned his gaze back to the scroll on the table. He felt the energy from below returning to normal. Ji Xiaoyu was once again immersed in her cultivation, but he didn't care. He sat on the chair, looking at the scroll, lost in thought. The influence he had on his surroundings wasn't just active from his side, but also aided by the momentum of heaven and earth, which gave him a deeper understanding of the ways of heaven and earth. He had this inexplicable feeling that he wanted to hide, but the way of heaven and earth did not want him to hide, hence it influenced the environment around him. The great momentum of heaven and earth was like a surging tide. The nets of cause and effect were like heaven-trapping webs. All beings could neither resist them nor escape. Everything has its advantages and disadvantages. While helping the environment around him, he would also be drawn into more webs of causality. In that moment, Guan suddenly understood why many great powers retreated into seclusion indefinitely. It might not be merely because enlightenment took so much time. Just like the great cold demon sect, there must be many great cultivators hidden away in seclusion, who had evaded disaster precisely because they withdrew from the world. Is this not a way of surviving? Guan was not fearful because of this revelation. Rather, he was contemplating how heaven and earth operated the laws of causality and destiny, creating a set of rules that most beings fear. Destiny. Guan never believed in an irresistible destiny. That which is irresistible is only so because it still lies within the rules. If one's strength surpasses the rules, how can one be manipulated? As for how to transcend destiny and surpass the ways of heaven and earth, that was the real direction Guan needed to think about. He sat in his room without moving all night, and early the next day, he rode the blood prison Great Saint to the outer gate city to watch the excitement. A night had passed, and Zhuo Yijian was still in deep enlightenment, with over 100 great cultivators from the supreme sect protecting him and temporarily suspending the inheritance assessment of the heaven-cutting axe, not allowing anyone to approach Zhuo Yijian. Zhuo Yijian's cultivation level was not worth mentioning in the current supreme sect, but as he received the sword intent inheritance of the sword Venerable Fudao, it had a completely different significance. The supreme sect placed great importance on it, as a way to show respect to the sword Venerable Fudao. As Guan arrived at the outer gate city not long after, he encountered a middle-aged man accompanied by several young men and women. They were walking among the crowd, looking around curiously, finding everything new and amazing. "Chuanyue, long time no see." A voice reached Chuanyue's ears, prompting him to turn his head instinctively, only to see the blood prison Great Saint standing next to Guan. The blood prison Great Saint was as tall as an adult and had a domineering presence, but Chuanyue had seen larger demon pets and mounts, so he was not flustered. Chuanyue looked at Guan with doubt and asked, "You are?" The fact that the other person was riding a mount meant he must be a cultivator, and Chuanyue had to approach him cautiously. The descendants of the Chuanyue family following behind were just as curious, sizing up Guan, surprised to find that someone in the supreme sect knew their grandfather. Guan smiled and said, "Have you forgotten? I met you in your home, when you were only 15 years old. You kept nagging your grandfather to take you on the path of immortal cultivation." Chuanyue was stunned, then his eyes widened in astonishment and he asked, "You're the person who visited my grandfather back then. How come you, so young?" Guan asked, "How is your grandfather?" Chuanyue hurriedly replied, "He's quite well, spends his days cultivating and drinking tea, with no need to worry about anything." The descendants of the Chuanyue family looked at one another in confusion. Their grandfather's grandfather was the primordial ancestor of their family, wasn't he? They had only seen Xiaochuan once or twice, and in their minds Xiaochuan was amiable but with a status far beyond theirs, they could only feel reverence. After a conversation, Guan learned that Chuanyue had come to bring his descendants to broaden their horizons, while also seeking opportunities. Guan took out a token from his sleeve and tossed it to Chuanyue. If their aptitude is not exceptionally outstanding and there are no other connections, they can seek to become servant disciples at the Chores Hall. With this token of mine, you can enter the third medicine valley. Chuanyue instinctively caught the token, and was about to inquire further when the blood prison Great Saint took a step forward and brushed past him. Chuanyue turned to look at Guan's retreating figure and asked, "Senior, How should I address you? Guan simply raised his hand and made no sound. Chuan Yue couldn't help but stare at the token in his hand, deeply puzzled. At that moment, another male cultivator came over and laughed. Brother, you're in luck to be connected to the Third Medicine Valley. With such good fortune, foundation establishment is as good as certain, making a solid foundation for your path of immortal cultivation. Foundation establishment. The descendants of the Chuanyue family immediately brightened up, their breathing quickening. Chuanyue quickly saluted the male cultivator and inquired about the situation in the Third Medicine Valley. The male cultivator gave a rough introduction, mentioning thousands of servant disciples, countless medicinal herbs, and the high-ranking members of the supreme sect that could be seen in the valley every day, among others. The information left Chuanyue dumbstruck. Just who was the person they had just met to have such influence? Unable to contain himself, Chuanyue asked, "Do you know the person we just met?" The male cultivator shook his head with a smile, clapped Chuanyue on the shoulder, and walked away, leaving Chuanyue even more curious and in awe of Guan. The now distant Guan couldn't help but smile wryly to himself. That kid has always loved playing these little tricks back in Medicine Valley. The cultivator who had introduced Chuanyue to the Third Medicine Valley was precisely a disciple who had graduated from there. By now, the number of disciples who had graduated from the Third Medicine Valley and Mystic Valley had reached tens of thousands, which is why Guan often encountered familiar faces. Guan's reputation had also spread far and wide. And considering the number of foundation establishment pills needed by these disciples, who else within the inner and outer sects could supply them? Moreover, over the years, Guan had indeed made no additional demands of the servant disciples, which is what made him admirable. Guan soon arrived at the book collection hall, ready to chat with the book enthusiasts there for a while. 7 days later, the Golden List Grand Tournament officially commenced. The Nine-Fingered Divine Lord also represented the Supreme Sect in the battle. With Li Ye unable to return, the Supreme Sect needed the combat strength of a wandering immortal. How the Supreme Sect persuaded the Nine-Fingered Divine Lord, Guan did not know. He had not watched at that time and wasn't interested in finding out now. That day, LV Baitian came to find Guan, pulling him who was watching the Golden List combat into the attic. Aside from the new disciples who were curious, many people ignored it as commonplace. Once seated inside the house, LV Baitian, unusually, did not discuss official matters but instead talked about his son LV Xian. That kid really is blindly loyal to Li Xiandao. I have no idea what he's thinking. No matter how the Taitsong dynasty develops, it remains the world of the Li family. What could he possibly gain? LV Baitian complained indignantly. Guan was reluctant to comment on their father-son matters. It must be said that LV Baitian and Li Xiandao were similar, both in their actions and their relationships with their sons. Originally, Li also despised Li Xiandao, while LV Xian still seeks the life of LV Baitian to this day. Guan had no interest in untangling their causality. An outsider's clarity was useless on family matters.